Chapter 1003. Guo Chaoyang looked at Yang Zhao expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "If you think that it's a humiliation to be helped by the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, then you can choose not to accept their help. You said that you didn't know about it beforehand, and only found out that they were from Xianmen Tianzong after entering their formation. That's fine too. You could just turn around and leave their formation. Why did you still follow them? If you feel that it's unbearable and you don't want to be helped by them, then just say it in person and fight them. Although it's also a betrayal, at least you'll be able to protect some of our pride. What's with the sneak attack after that? Do you also think that you're no match for them in a head-on fight? Yang Zhao, you and Wan Zhengluan have been learning Daoan by Yin Mountain for so many years. Where have you been learning?" Guo Chaoyang's expression was cold. However, in front of Chen Xingyu and the others, he still left some face for Yang Zhao, who was also a radical disciple. He communicated with Yang Zhao through telepathy using his mana, but his words were not polite. After a moment of silence, Yang Zhao answered softly, "Brother Guo, although I don't want to admit it, Brother Wan and I are indeed no match for them. Even Brother Shan, who is in the middle stage of Yuanying, is no match for Tang Jun of Xianmen Tianzong." Guo Chaoyang's expression softened and he said slowly, "You mean, you also agree with what Tang Jun said, that the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong are invincible in the same realm, even if they're up against us?" Yang Zhao's face turned even paler when he heard Meng Qi's words. However, he still nodded slightly. "Brother Guo, you and senior brother Chen are both rare geniuses. You are at the early stage of Yuanying, but your supernatural power is already stronger than Brother Shan, who is at the middle stage of Yuanying. You can even fight Sister Mu, who is at the late stage of Yuanying. Even in this temple, there are very few geniuses like you. But I really can't win against Xianmen Tianzong's Tang Jun, who is also at the late stage of the golden elixir." Guo Chaoyang's expression softened, and his stiff face even showed a hint of a smile. "You can't use the standard of the divine land to measure it. This sounds so familiar. Once upon a time, isn't that what others used to praise us?" The smile on Guo Chaoyang's face gradually disappeared, and he became expressionless again. It's a pity that Dao Yuding and Lin Tong didn't come to the desolate ancient star ocean. Among Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation direct disciples, there were two who had reached the nascent soul stage. They were Dao Yuding, who was under Wang Lin, and little Lin Tong, who was under Xiao Yan. The news had already spread to the world. Yang Zhao looked at Guo Chaoyang and slowly said, "Brother Guo, Tang Jun, Zhou Yunsong, and Han Yang are equally famous. They are known as the three strongest among Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation direct disciples in the same realm. Even Dao Yuding and Lin Tong were not as strong as them when they were at the late stage of the golden elixir." As he said this, he glanced at Chen Xingyu, who was next to him. Although Yang Zhao admired Guo Chaoyang's strength and talent, Guo Chaoyang and Chen Xingyu had fought many times in the internal competitions of the Taishu Temple over the years, and they were basically tied. Because Chen Xingyu had to go through all kinds of difficulties and obstacles in the process of cultivating the absolute Yin body, Guo Chaoyang, who had joined the sect later than him, had a more dazzling cultivation speed. He had already closed the gap between the two of them. If nothing unexpected happened, he might even advance to the middle stage of the Yuanying realm earlier. But when they were at the same cultivation realm, the strength of the two had always been about the same. In the past, during the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, Chen Xingyu had fought with Zhou Yunsong. Although during the Golden Elixir period, Chen Xingyu's cultivation was suppressed by Xianmen Tianzong's Hongfa Hall to the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm like Zhou Yunsong. The him at that time, because of his vision and experience, was definitely stronger than when he was in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. But the result of the fight was that Chen Xingyu was still defeated. Previously in the Little Kelowna world, although Zhou Yunsong did not directly fight, after seeing the strength of Tang Jun, who was equally famous, Yang Zhao felt a chill in his heart. Although it was one thing that the other party had many magic treasures, even if they only fought with their own magic power, Yang Zhao did not think that Shan Xiang, who was in the middle stage of the Yuanying realm, would be able to win. If Tang Jun was like this, then Zhou Yunsong and Han Yang, who were equally famous, were naturally not ordinary people. Guo Chaoyang said calmly, "I understand what you mean, but this will not shake the belief in my heart. In my heart, this temple is the strongest existence in the divine land, and even the entire Tianyuan world. As disciples of the Taishu realm, since we enjoy the glory of the sect, we should defend the dignity of the sect. When someone tries to challenge the glory of the temple, we, the disciples of the Taishu realm, have to stand up. This is our responsibility and our glory. Even if I lose personally, the Taishu temple cannot and will not lose. Guo Chaoyang stretched out his hands and spread his palms in front of him. He stared at the lines on his palms. I have never been a pedantic person. Our goal of dominating the heavens is not something that can be paved with moral essays. There are some methods that should be used. Naturally, we will use them. But all of this has a precondition. The way of the king is the right way, and the way of deceit is supplementary. The reason why our temple can dominate the heavens is first because we are strong enough. Without this as a foundation, no matter how many methods you use, it will only be a temporary achievement. Guo Chaoyang stared at Yang Zhao. The elders in the temple have to consider the big picture, and many other things. We don't know what they plan, but when we, the younger generation, face the younger generation of Xianmen Tianzong, the first thing we have to think about is defeating them, then scheming against them. Over the years, great waves have washed away the sand, but our temple has always stood tall. It has not fallen in the past, and it has not fallen now. We must ensure that our sect will not fall in the future. When you have doubts in your heart, how can you work hard? Yang Zhao was silent for a moment before he slowly said, Brother Guo, please reconsider. To be disrespectful to Sister Mu, although she is already in the late Yuanying stage, everyone knows that you and senior brother Chen are more talented and have more potential than her. If you and senior brother Chen lose, our last hope will also be gone. Guo Chaoyang's expression was calm. He didn't mind Yang Zhao's words. He only said indifferently, Yang Zhao, you still don't understand, but I don't expect you to think the same way as me. However, you need to pay attention to one thing. If we lose confidence and perseverance, even if we can temporarily gain the upper hand with tricks, we will only go downhill. At that time, not only will we lose the present, but we will also lose the future. On the other hand, even if I lose, Chen Xingyu also loses, and our generation loses, our younger generation, our disciples, and our grand disciples will eventually catch up. Although he had always admired Guo Chaoyang, Yang Zhao was never a person who followed blindly. He said in a deep voice, if we can completely cut off the other party, we won't lose the present, and we won't lose the future. If we lose, we will only help the opponent's momentum. Even if it is as you said, Brother Guo, we may not win the future. Guo Chaoyang glanced at him, and there was obvious disappointment in his eyes. Yang Zhao, you still don't understand. We are different from Chen Xingyu and the others. In order for our temple to rule the world, I am not afraid to completely destroy all obstacles on this path, but that is only a means. Yang Zhao, what is important is your heart. Your faith has been shaken, and your state of mind is too weak. If you can't get rid of this mentality of guarding day and night, you will find that one Xianmen Tianzong, one Tang Jun, one Zhou Yinsong, one Hanyang will keep popping up in front of you, and you will never be able to destroy them all. And you will become weaker and weaker, until one day you are completely trampled on by others, and you will never be able to rise again. Guo Chaoyang said coldly, recently, not only has your cultivation stagnated, but because of the unstable state of mind, your supernatural power and magic power are faintly showing signs of degeneration. Haven't you noticed it yourself? Yang Zhao was silent, and his face was getting paler. Guo Chaoyang reached out and patted his shoulder. Grandmaster and the others have to look at the big picture. We will just follow their orders, and what we need to do now is to defend the glory of our temple. Let's go together, and find Brother Shan and Sister Zhao. If we meet Xianmen Tianzong's people, I will take the initiative to challenge them. Guo Zhaoyang's expression was cold and hard. Even if junior brother Wan is in the wrong, as long as he is a disciple of this monastery and has not been expelled from the monastery, it should be dealt with by this monastery. If the celestial sect of Xianmen kills him, they must pay the price. It doesn't matter if Lin Tong and Dao Yuding didn't enter the Sea of Stars, but there are still Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu, right? Yang Zhao was shocked. Brother Gua. Gua Chaoyang looked at him calmly. Tang Jun of Xianmen Tianzong dared to challenge Brother Shan of Middle Yuanying Realm in the late Golden Elixir, but I Early Yuanying Realm in the Early Yuanying Realm, don't dare? To be honest, I don't have enough confidence. But winning or losing is another matter. At least I want to fight him face to face. Lowering his eyelids, Yang Zhao did not say a word. He knew that Gua Chaoyang was trying to get back at them for their previous actions. Winning or losing is another matter, but cultivators of Taishu Temple never lack courage and pride. The strong don't need to prove anything to the weak. But when the strong fight against the strong, they can use all kinds of tricks, but they can't show weakness in their mentality. Mu Xian and Chen Xingyu looked at Gua Chaoyang and Yang Zhao, who were facing each other in silence. They could feel the transcendence energy transmission between the two, but they didn't try to find out or interrupt. Silently, they just waited. Among the crowd, Ding Runfeng, who had a conflict with Yu Hongyan and others with Bai Shiqian in West Hill City in the past, and Fan Xiefeng, who had an outstanding performance in the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, stood silently. But the way they looked at Yang Zhao was very complicated. After a while, Gua Chaoyang turned to look at Mu Xian. Sister Mu, let's go. Mu Xian's expression was indifferent. She nodded nonchalantly. The group of descendants of Taishu Temple continued their journey, traversing the interior of Little Kelowna World. After walking for a while, Chen Xingyu, Gua Chaoyang, and Mu Xian's expressions changed slightly. They looked into the distance and saw a few figures moving. They were all dressed in purple. They were the people of Xianmen Tianzong. They were Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, Li Xingfei, and Zhou Yinsong. Yang Tai and the rest were slightly stunned when they saw Chen Xingyu and others. Then their gazes fell on Yang Zhao. The four of them frowned. Chapter 1004. When they saw each other, the people from Taishu Temple and the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong were slightly stunned. Almost immediately, Zhou Yinsong and Chen Xingyu's eyes met. One was cold and murderous, while the other was gentle and indifferent. Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei also glanced at the people from Taishu Temple. After a brief pause on Chen Xingyu, Gua Chaoyang, and Mu Xian, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Zhao. When they were trapped in the turbulent flow of spiritual qi, Yang Tai and the others were still aware of what was happening in the outside world. Although Yang Zhao did not attack together with Wan Jingluan, he first stopped Zhao Mingxiu, and then stopped Tang Jun from seeking revenge on Wan Jingluan. Yang Tai and the others witnessed everything that happened. Yang Zhao's expression did not change. He still looked indifferent. Mu Xian and Gua Chaoyang were expressionless. They did not say anything. Chen Xingyu retracted his gaze from Zhou Yinsong and looked at Yang Tai and the others. He cupped his hands and said, Brother Yang told us about what happened before. First of all, we thank you for helping Brother Shan, Brother Yang, Sister Zhao, and Brother Wan. Yang Tai said calmly, Friend Chen, you're being too polite. Compared to Tang Jun and the others, he was calmer and gentler. But that did not mean he was a simple-minded person. On the contrary, as a disciple of Zhu Yi, he was the same as Zhu Yi. He repaid kindness with kindness, and repaid enmity with kindness. Zhou Yinsong stared at Chen Xingyu, Yang Zhao, and the others. His eyes were even colder. Lu Xiaofeng glanced at Chen Xingyu and said calmly, Friend Chen, don't be in a hurry to thank us. It seems that some people in your sect are not grateful. We saved them, but saved them from trouble and enmity. Yang Zhao was about to speak, but Gua Chaoyang raised his hand to stop him. Yang Zhao immediately shut his mouth. Gua Chaoyang's eyes swept across Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and the others. Indeed, we should be grateful. But what happened after that is indeed enmity. It doesn't matter if Brother One did something wrong. Our Taishu Temple has its own rules to punish him. A smile gradually appeared on Gua Chaoyang's cold and stiff face, but there was not the slightest hint of a smile in his eyes. As long as Junior Marshal Brother Wan is a disciple of our monastery and hasn't been expelled from the monastery, he should be punished by our monastery. You killed him, and this is a grudge. Li Xingfei said calmly, Unfortunately, I don't see where your Taishu Temple's rules are. If you really have them, why is this Yang Zhao still standing here? Yang Tai and Gua Chaoyang stared at each other. An upright person must first correct himself. Otherwise, your words are not convincing at all. Lu Xiaofeng looked at Guo Chaoyang, shook his head and said, "You just said, it doesn't matter if Wan Zhengluan did something wrong. Is there a need to debate whether he did something wrong or not? Or does your excellency have the same opinion as that Shanxiang fellow? You think that Wan Zhengluan wanted to help us? Who would have thought that his good intentions turned out to be bad? Everything was just an accident?" He sneered. "Do you think everyone here is blind?" Chen Xingyu frowned. Before he could say anything, Mu Xian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "If Brother Wan was not dead, there would still be a need for us to continue talking here. Now that Brother Wan is dead, there is no point in talking anymore." Lu Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. "You dare to do it, but you don't dare to admit it?" Silently, Mu Xian said, "Brother Wan has died in your hands. It doesn't matter whether you admit it or not. Both our sects are here for the sake of Ding of Shenzhou. There will definitely be a battle. Since we've met in advance, let's just start." Chen Xingyu frowned slightly and looked at Mu Xian. Mu Xian turned to look at him expressionlessly. Fan Xiefeng tugged at Chen Xingyu without batting an eyelid. He used his transcendence energy to transmit his voice to him. "Sister Mu has been holding her breath." Chen Xingyu sighed. He understood the meaning behind Fan Xiefeng's words. Although Mu Xian was already at the later stage of yuanying, she was actually not that old. Her master was the former Emperorian wayfarer of Taishu Temple, Pang Jie, who had been suppressed by Taishu demon suppressing steel. When Pang Jie was still young and his cultivation was still low, he coincidentally brought back a young girl, Mu Xian. As a result, Mu Xian became Pang Jie's disciple. It was rare for Pang Jie to accept a disciple at such a young age in the entire Taishu Temple. Those in Taishu Temple who were familiar with this pair of master and disciple sighed in their hearts. After Mu Xian came of age, her feelings for Pang Jie had already surpassed that of a master and disciple relationship. After Pang Jie had been suppressed by Taishu demon suppressing steel, Mu Xian had maintained a strange silence and did not react much. However, her cultivation of the supreme Wang Qing Dao had progressed at a tremendous pace, advancing by leaps and bounds. In the eyes of the people in Taishu Temple, not only did they not feel happy, but they were also filled with worry. The supreme Wang Qing Dao, one of the two arts of Taishu and Void, did not pursue emotionlessness but to forget about emotions. Its core lay in the supreme Wang Qing Dao, seeming to have feelings but also being emotionless. The deeper one's feelings were, the greater the rewards one would gain after forgetting. The taboo was not about having feelings in one's heart, but about having emotions that were tangled and entangled. If one were to sink too deep, the consequences would be unthinkable. However, if one could grasp the essence of emotionlessness giving birth to emotions, obtaining emotions and forgetting about them, the speed of one's cultivation and the power of one's supernatural powers would be astonishing. At the very least, in terms of cultivation speed, it was much faster than the Void Yin-Yang Dao, one of the two arts of Taishu and Void. After Pang Jie had been suppressed, Mu Xian was not as emotionless and unresponsive as she appeared to be. On the contrary, she had completely released her feelings for Pang Jie, no longer suppressing them. However, there was a problem. Just like how the moon overflowed when it was full, it would decline when it was at its peak. If she had been immersed in this feeling and was unable to get out, then the result of reaching the top of the mountain with no way out would be to directly fall to the bottom of the valley. This kind of problem in the state of mind was not something that a cultivator could fully control on their own. They needed to break through the knot in their heart, and also needed external opportunities. Especially under the cold appearance of Mu Xian, she had cultivated the Taishang Wang Qing Dao into the Dao of absolute emotion. While her cultivation realm was advancing by leaps and bounds, it was even more difficult to break through the true meaning of Taishang Wang Qing. It was not enough to rely on herself. To break through the knot in her heart, the key was still on Pang Jie. However, it was not about whether Pang Jie could come back from the Taishu demon suppressing steel, but it was on Xianmen Tianzong, who had tortured Pang Jie. Mu Xian naturally did not have any thoughts about Lin Feng, but this knot in her heart could be completely transferred to the disciples and disciples of Lin Feng. If she could break through this tribulation, Mu Xian might even be able to directly prove her primordial spirit. However, If it was delayed for a long time and exceeded a certain limit, it would gradually turn from prosperity to decline, and the consequences would be extremely dangerous. Countless seniors in the Taishu temple who had cultivated the Taishang Wangqing Dao had already set an example for Mu Xian. Of the two techniques of Taishang and Void, the Void Yin and Yang Dao was relatively stable. It was not easy to cultivate normally, and the progress was slow, but there were not too many hidden dangers. As for the Taishang Wangqing Dao, it was easy to cultivate normally, and the progress was faster. If one could break through the obstacle in it, one's cultivation could advance by leaps and bounds. However, if one could not break through the knot of love, then the consequences would be unpredictable. The obstacle of love was not limited to the love between men and women. In addition to love, family, friendship, and even compassion for all living beings in the world, and various other emotions could become help in the cultivation of the Taishang Wangqing Dao. At the same time, they could also become obstacles. Although she was a disciple of Peng Jie, Mu Xian, who had a cold temperament before, had an indifferent attitude towards the ideas of conservatives and radicals. Her position was inclined to be neutral. Even now, she still did not walk into the radicals' position like her master Peng Jie. However, this did not affect her hostility towards Xianmen Tianzong. This was because of emotional factors, and also because of her own path of cultivation. If it was only the former, Chen Xingyu would still have the heart to persuade her, but since it was related to the latter, he could only keep his mouth shut. Guo Chaoyang, Ding Runfeng, Yang Zhao, and the others were not surprised by Mu Xian's reaction. Guo Chaoyang looked at Yang Tai and the others and said calmly, "If you can contact your fellow disciples, you'd better hurry up and do so." Yang Tai's gaze swept across Mu Xian, Guo Chaoyang, and Chen Xingyu, and he said indifferently, "Late Yuanying, early Yuanying, very high cultivation, but so what?" Although he was still young, and with his late golden elixir cultivation, Yang Tai was facing the young generation of Taishu Temple's cultivators. His expression was calm. He stood where he was, faintly exuding the aura of a master. Wan Zhongluan only has himself to blame. You can't tell right from wrong. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, have I ever been afraid of anyone? Yang Tai cupped his hands and said, Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Yang Tai, please enlighten me. Among the Taishu Temple's disciples in front of him, besides Chen Xingyu, Mu Xian, and Guo Chaoyang, Ding Runfeng, Fan Xiefeng, and the others were also in the early Yuanying cultivation. Other than them, Taishu Temple still had Yuanying cultivators here. There were only 4 people in Yang Tai's group, and all of them were in the golden elixir period. But when facing Chen Xingyu and the others, their aura did not weaken at all. Although Lu Xiaofeng and Li Xingfei were still in the middle golden elixir realm, their expressions were calm and composed. They cupped their hands together. Xianmen Tianzong's disciple Lu Xiaofeng, please enlighten me. Xianmen Tianzong's disciple Li Xingfei, please enlighten me. Zhou Yunsong, who was standing to the side, was surrounded by a faint black smoke. He looked extremely domineering and fierce, and his aura was even stronger than Yang Tai's. Although most of the time he stayed in Yujing Mountain to cultivate in seclusion, and did not go out easily, Zhou Yunsong's name was still faintly known as the top second-generation true teaching disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. His fierce name was known to the whole world. He rarely went out and fought with others, but his subordinates did not leave anyone alive. He did not act rashly, and when he did, he showed no mercy. Ever since they met, even though Zhou Yunsong had not said a word, but the disciple of the celestial sect of wonders that the people of the Taishu Temple cared about the most was still this silent and cold youth. Guo Chaoyang frowned. Just as he was about to speak, Yang Zhao, who was beside him, suddenly took a step forward and said softly, "Brother Guo, let me do it." "Good." Guo Chaoyang glanced at him. There was a faint hint of admiration in his eyes as he nodded. As soon as Yang Zhao finished speaking, he turned around and looked at Yang Tai and the others coldly. He cupped his hands together and said indifferently, "I am Yang Zhao of Taishu Temple's disciple. Xianmen Tianzong, please enlighten me." Chapter 1005. With an indifferent expression, Yang Zhao looked at Yang Tai and said silently, "Please enlighten me." Although he did not completely believe what Guo Chaoyang had said before, Guo Chaoyang had mentioned that not only had his cultivation stagnated recently, but it was even showing signs of regression. Yang Zhao was well aware of this problem. He knew his own affairs best. Although he was unwilling to admit it, Yang Zhao knew that the strong rise of the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong had indeed made his state of mind unstable. This was a kind of damage and regression on a purely spiritual level. His hostility towards the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, his desire to get rid of them quickly, and the feeling of humiliation because he had been saved by them, in fact, more or less stemmed from his bewilderment and self-doubt, which caused his Taoist heart to be clouded. Before this, the subconscious idea in Yang Zhao's mind was to find a way to eliminate these factors that made his state of mind unstable. He would use the method of eliminating external demons to eliminate internal demons, and eliminate the demons in his heart. However, after talking with Guo Chaoyang, Yang Zhao changed his mind and decided to fight the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong head-on to determine who was superior. Looking at Yang Zhao, Zhou Yunsong's expression was cold, and his body moved slightly. Yang Tai raised his palm to stop him and said softly, "Senior brother Zhou, let me do this. We need you to hold the line." Li Xingfei said telepathically, "If we are talking about holding the line and keeping an eye on the others on the other side, Brother Yang, you are more suitable." Yang Tai answered, "Compared to senior brother Zhou, I am at a disadvantage." Lu Xiaofeng chuckled and said, "You and Yinsong wait for a while. I will do this." Li Xingfei said, "You have fought with Wan Zhongluan before, so they are more familiar with your situation. Let me do it." "It doesn't matter. So what if they are familiar with me?" Lu Xiaofeng flexed his fingers. "I don't have full confidence in the disciples of the Taishu Temple in the Yuanying period, but I have more than enough confidence in the disciples below the Yuanying period." Hearing this, Li Xingfei smiled and didn't say anything else. Yang Tai also smiled and nodded. "I wish Senior Lu Xia success." Zhou Yunsong looked at Lu Xiaofeng. Among the second-generation disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, he was the most eccentric and rarely interacted with the others. Only Lu Xiaofeng and Yin Wuwei could talk to each other. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything in the end. He just nodded solemnly at Lu Xiaofeng. "With you guys here, I can naturally rest assured." Lu Xiaofeng smiled. He understood what Zhou Yunsong meant. He was telling him to fight Yang Zhao without worry and not worry about anything else. If Mu Xian, Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and the others interfered, Zhou Yunsong would act immediately. Lu Xiaofeng dusted off his clothes and immediately stepped forward. He came in front of Yang Zhao and cupped his hands. Xianmen Tianzong disciple Lu Xiaofeng asks for guidance from fellow Taoist Yang of the Taishu Temple. After a short pause, Lu Xiaofeng asked indifferently, "In the battle between you and me, do we need to use external objects such as magic tools or talismans?" This point had to be made clear in advance. Generally speaking, in a more peaceful battle of magical powers, both sides would only compete with their own magical powers, and would not use external objects such as magic tools. If external objects were to be used in an unrestricted battle, it often meant that it was a battle of life and death. If external objects were to be used, the deciding factor of the outcome of the battle would no longer depend on whose magic power was higher, or whose magical powers were stronger. The lower the cultivation of both sides, the more obvious this was. After all, for the cultivators of the Golden Elixir period, a magic tool could directly determine the final outcome of the battle. Yuanying magic tools and Yuanying talismans would also affect the outcome of the battle to a large extent. This was the case even for outstanding descendants of Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple like Lu Xiaofeng and Yang Zhao. A Yuanying magic tool and a Yuanying talisman might not be able to completely determine the final outcome, but what if there were a few more? Only in the battle of magical powers, nothing else. Yang Zhao replied indifferently. As soon as these words came out, Mu Xian frowned slightly, but her brows immediately relaxed. Chen Xingyu's expression did not change, but his eyes were slightly closed, and the light in his eyes was restrained. On the contrary, the expression on Guo Chaoyang's face became colder, and he shook his head imperceptibly. He could see very clearly that it was not that Yang Zhao did not want to have a life-and-death battle with Lu Xiaofeng. If he could kill Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Zhao would be more than happy to do so. Guo Chaoyang, who had heard from Yang Zhao about their previous experience of fighting with Tang Jun, naturally understood that the reason why Yang Zhao chose to only fight with magical powers and did not use any external objects was actually because he was afraid that Lu Xiaofeng would have as many treasures as Tang Jun. Tang Jun suppressed Shan Xiang and Yang Zhao by himself and killed Wan Jingluan. In addition to his amazing magical powers, as a golden elixir period cultivator, he had 3 Yuanying magic tools that he carried with him, which was really shocking. Moreover, his 3 Yuanying magic tools, whether it was the Sun Crown, the Xitigarbha Pure Yang Mirror, or the Pure Yang Taoist Robe, were all of outstanding quality. With such wealth, he was even more extravagant than most Yuanying cultivators, which shocked Yang Zhao and the others. The magic tools and treasures that the disciples of Taishu Temple carried with them were also extraordinary. Not to mention Shan Xiang, who was already in the middle stage of Yuanying. Yang Zhao and Wan Jingluan were also only golden elixir period cultivators, but they also had Yuanying magic tools to protect themselves. Compared to the descendants of other forces, they were naturally local tycoons. However, there was a fear of comparison. Standing in front of Tang Jun, who was overflowing with wealth, Yang Zhao immediately made others feel that he was extremely poor. In fact, Taishu Temple had a long history and a large business. Naturally, it had stored a lot of resources and treasures. If they really wanted to arm their disciples to the teeth, it was not an impossible thing. However, Taishu Temple would guarantee the basic safety of its disciples when they went out to train. It would not give too many treasures to prevent its disciples from indulging in material things and delaying their own cultivation. There were quite a few nascent soul magic tools stored in the Taishu Temple's treasure pavilion, but there were very few nascent soul magic tools that could compare to the Sun Crown, Xitigarbha Pure Yang Mirror, Heaven Returning Magic Shield and other treasures. Magic tools like the Sun Crown, although it was a Yuanying magic tool, were refined by Xiao Yan, who had already achieved primordial soul. Naturally, they were different from the magic tools refined by Yuanying cultivators. There were many primordial soul adepts in Taishu Temple. Not only were there many, but it was also the Holy Land with the largest number of primordial soul adepts in the Divine Land. However, most of the time nascent divinity cultivators spent would be used to nurture and refine their own magical treasures, aside from cultivating their Taoist techniques and divine abilities. Not many would spend their time refining nascent soul magical treasures. Normally, after Xiao Yan and the others achieved primordial soul, it should be the same. However, they were all richer than Tang Jun. Some primordial soul adepts might not even have magic tools, but when it came to Xiao Yan and the others, they had all kinds of magic tools bestowed by Master Lin Feng, picked up by themselves, killed enemies. There were all kinds of magic tools. This allowed them to not only take time to refine some magic tools for their own disciples, but also to help Yang Qing, Yu Hongyan and the others, who had not achieved primordial soul. Of course, this behavior was not known to outsiders yet, or they would inevitably be scolded for being shameless. However, Lin Feng and his disciples did not care too much, as long as they were happy. Anyway, it was not the first time they had been scolded like this. Moreover, in addition to self-refining, Xiao Yan and the others not only picked up magic tools and all kinds of rare treasures, but also many top-notch Yuanying magic tools. Over the years, every time they went out, they came back with a lot of magic tools. Many of them were no longer of use to themselves, so they naturally gave them to the younger disciples. On the other hand, because of the existence of Lin Feng's talent detector, bone structure, comprehension, and willpower can be selected. Disciples with low luck can naturally enter, but disciples with high luck and the total value of the 4 will definitely not miss it. The luck of the younger generation disciples is actually very good. In fact, Xianmen Tianzong also had a certain control over the magic tools that the disciples carried with them. They also had to pay attention to balance, lest the disciples did not think about making progress, blindly relying on external objects, and neglect their own cultivation. And now, it was actually the result after the control. Sometimes Lin Feng would laugh at himself from time to time, saying that the disciples in his sect were using their heaven-defying luck to make up for the historical gap between them and other forces. Therefore, Although they were not like Tang Jun, Yang Tai, and other chief disciples who were really unparalleled nouveau riches armed by their own masters, Lu Xiaofeng, Li Xingfei, and the others were not poor. If they really went all out, Yang Zhao might not really be able to compete with them. But for Guo Chaoyang and Yang Zhao, even if they were beaten to death, they would not believe that every cultivator in Xianmen Tianzong's golden elixir period could be as rich as Tang Jun. But Yang Zhao did not want to take this risk. When this scene fell into the eyes of Guo Chaoyang, he could undoubtedly see that although Yang Zhao took the initiative to challenge, he still did not have enough confidence in his heart and was full of misgivings. It was not wrong to think of ways to increase his chances of winning, but the problem was that Yang Zhao did not know the details of his opponent, so he adopted the most conservative approach, which was almost to prevent defeat before winning. Such a style was naturally not liked by Guo Chaoyang. After all, his current opponent was not Zhou Yunsong and Yang Tai, who were in the late golden elixir period, but Lu Xiaofeng, who was one realm lower than him. Although Lu Xiaofeng had defeated Wan Zhengluan, Yang Zhao's strength was also stronger than Wan Zhengluan. Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Tai, and the others were slightly taken aback by Yang Zhao's answer of choosing to only fight and not compete with external objects. Lu Xiaofeng looked Yang Zhao up and down, and was a little puzzled, but he did not pay too much attention, and immediately nodded. Sure. After saying that, the aura of magic power surged from both of them at the same time, and a dazzling golden light suddenly appeared all over Lu Xiaofeng's body. The needle-like golden light shone continuously around his body, and it was extremely dazzling, causing Yang Zhao, who was in front of him, to have no choice but to squint his eyes slightly. True sun fire? Lu Xiaofeng's body was like golden needles, dazzling and gathering into a ball of pure golden flames. This was naturally the true sunfire, also known as the Great Sun Heavenly Brilliance. He learned from Xiao Yan and cultivated the Tao Te Ching and the Burning Sky Mantra. While using them as the main principles, he also cultivated the Great Sun Heavenly Brilliance scripture, refining the true sunfire seed and cultivating the Great Sun Heavenly Brilliance. Surrounded by this golden true fire, he looked like a small sun. Yang Zhao looked at him calmly and asked indifferently, Lu Xiaofeng, as far as I know, you seem to be one of the first batch of second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong? You should be the eldest disciple under Elder Xiao, right? Chapter 1006. Hearing Yang Zhao's question, Lu Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. What do you want to say? Yang Zhao said faintly, the first seat disciple under Elder Xiao seems to be that Tang Jun. I heard that he joined the sect when it opened its doors for the third time? Lu Xiaofeng shrugged his shoulders and smiled nonchalantly. Isn't your method of sowing discord too low level? Sowing discord? There's no need for that. Yang Zhao said indifferently. Because the gap between you and that Tang Jun is too big. Anyone would know that you can't beat him, so what's the point of sowing discord? Lu Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and looked at Yang Zhao. Yang Zhao said calmly, according to the vast thousand worlds time, that Tang Jun should have joined the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly 7 years ago, when your sect opened its doors for the third time. What about you? I think you joined the sect when it opened its doors for the first time, right? I can't remember how long it was, but it's been at least 10 years. A faint smile appeared on Yang Zhao's indifferent face. I wonder how long the two of you stayed in the heavenly grotto heaven. In terms of actual cultivation time, who's longer and who's shorter? You're already at the middle stage of the golden elixir, so you're not bad either. If I'm not wrong, you should be facing the Yin Wind tribulation at any time, right? Unfortunately, that Tang Jun probably already has the ability to face the Void Thunder tribulation. Lu Xiaofeng stared at him and suddenly smiled. It's fine to tell you how many years I've cultivated, but how long did you take to reach the late stage of the golden elixir? Yang Zhao slowly shook his head. I've said it before, I don't have any intention of sowing discord, because there's no need for that. I just suddenly thought of this matter, so I'm just asking. I have to say that your sect's Elder Zhao's foresight when choosing a first-seat disciple is still very accurate. Lu Xiaofeng smiled. It's fine if you don't want to answer. Let's see who's the real deal. With that, his figure flashed, and he was already in front of Yang Zhao, slapping down with his palm. Previously, when Tang Jun fought against Shan Xiang, Wan Zhengluan, and Yang Zhao, Lu Xiaofeng had helped maintain the defense of the heaven-returning law realm. However, he had seen the entire process of the fight and naturally knew that Yang Zhao was a pure Dharma cultivator. Since that was the case, close combat was definitely the best way to deal with him. The closer they were, the more effective it would be against Lu Xiaofeng. Most of the disciples under Xiao Yan Funtianya had deep attainments in martial cultivation. Lu Xiaofeng was also one of the best. Lu Xiaofeng slapped out with his palm. It did not seem to match the ferocious momentum of the solar real fire that surrounded his body. The palm force was as gentle and continuous as flowing water. It was the Qin water palm of the 8 trigram fist that was passed down in Xianmen Tianzong. This palm force was not compatible with Funtianya's Taoist techniques. Very few of Funtianya's disciples used it. However, when Lu Xiaofeng slapped down with his palm, halfway through the palm force he suddenly changed his palm into a fist. The Qin water palm turned into the Li fire fist. A ferocious power exploded fiercely. The softest became the strongest in the blink of an eye. There was no delay in the change, and it seemed extremely natural. The power that Lu Xiaofeng exploded with this change was much more ferocious than when he used the Li fire fist directly. The golden light of the solar real fire on the iron fist flickered continuously. It was as if a small sun was smashing down on the top of Yang Zhao's head. This scene fell into the eyes of Yang Tai, Li Xingfei, and Zhou Yinsong, and they felt that their eyes lit up. Using the can to fill the Li, Lu Xiaoxiang's change of move has deeply grasped the essence of the 8 trigram fist. Facing Lu Xiaofeng's fist, the expressions of the people from Taishu Temple also moved slightly. This change shows the depth of martial arts. Yang Zhao, who was facing the attack, also frowned slightly. However, his expression was normal, as if he had already expected Lu Xiaofeng's ferocious attack. He was just amazed by the exquisite change of move of using the can to fill the Li. Almost at the moment when Lu Xiaofeng's body moved, Yang Zhao's body floated backward. His feet kept tapping lightly, as if he was stepping on a continuously extending flight of stairs. This was the escape technique of Taishu Temple, the Heaven Ascension technique. As he retreated, although the Li fire fist, which was supported by the solar real fire, was violent, it looked like it was going to miss. Lu Xiaofeng let out a clear whistle and used the escape technique of Heaven and Earth 8 directions, flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground, chasing after Yang Zhao. Heaven and Earth 8 techniques and 8 trigram fist, 1 technique and 1 martial art, were the standard divine techniques of Xianmen Tianzong. They were refined by Xiao Yan Zhu Yi and the other martial brothers, and prepared for the younger disciples. They looked simple, but in fact, they were all-encompassing. On the premise of reducing the difficulty of practicing, they could increase their power as much as possible. Between these two almost contradictory characteristics, they constantly sought a balance and worked hard to improve. Every disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, without exception, would earnestly practice these 2 divine techniques. As their cultivation base continued to grow, their horizons continued to widen, and their understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth continued to deepen. Perhaps there would come a day when they would no longer use Heaven and Earth 8 techniques and 8 trigram fist. But for the cultivators of the Golden Elixir period, these 2 divine techniques were still quite exquisite. Yang Zhao used the Heaven Ascension technique and dodged Lu Xiaofeng's attack, but Lu Xiaofeng immediately chased after him, not giving him the slightest chance to breathe. Good timing. Although Yang Zhao looked distressed, his eyes were as calm as before. Instead, he was very satisfied with the current situation. Suddenly he began to chant. One strange syllable after another came out of his mouth, forming a strange melody, and the tune of an ancient ballad. The song was ethereal and unpredictable, containing a vast world and a grand and mighty meaning. Faint white clouds dispersed along with the song, gradually enveloping the surrounding area. Hearing this ballad, Yang Tai, Li Xingfei, and Zhou Yinsong all frowned slightly. Yang Tai looked at Li Xingfei and asked, "Senior sister Li, is this the misty supreme song of Taishu Temple?" Li Xingfei stared at the white clouds that were getting thicker and thicker. "I've never seen it with my own eyes, but it shouldn't be wrong." The misty supreme song originated from the divine technique of the supreme Wangqing Dao. It combined the killing technique of sound with other divine techniques and supernatural powers, and combined the ethereal song with the tangible clouds. The cultivators of Taishu Temple were placed in the clouds and moved along with the song. Their bodies became ethereal and unpredictable, and it was difficult for their opponents to grasp their movements. When the Misty Supreme Song was combined with escape techniques like the Heaven Ascension technique and the Clear Sky Flow, it would be difficult for his opponents to hurt him. The white clouds floated in the air as if they were endless, yet they were soft and gentle. It was difficult for Lu Xiaofeng to burn them all with his Sun True Fire. Although this divine technique wasn't a passive defense, it indeed combined the essence of the defensive techniques of Taishu Temple. If it was combined with the Endless Transformation technique, its defensive power would be even more outstanding. While the song was still lingering, Yang Zhao's voice echoed in the white clouds through his supernatural power and divine sense. If it were Tang Jun, with his pale flame power and nether evil flame, I'm afraid this divine technique wouldn't work. Or Zhou Yunsong, who is standing over there, could break my divine technique with his burning sun vitality shattering qi. Unfortunately, you're not the two of them, so you can only be trapped in my divine technique. The Misty Supreme Song was not only used for hiding and defense. The white clouds were also constantly eroding Lu Xiaofeng's supernatural power, trying to break Lu Xiaofeng's protective supernatural power restriction. The true fire of the sun was tyrannical, and the white clouds retreated as soon as they came into contact with it. But soon they came back again and again. Just like that, the cycle kept repeating, like a blunt knife cutting the flesh, wearing down Lu Xiaofeng's magic power bit by bit. Facing the predicament before him, Lu Xiaofeng wasn't anxious or impatient. Yang Zhao's provocation didn't seem to have any effect on him. His hands changed hand seals, and a large amount of Sun True Fire gathered, turning into a small pill. It looked inconspicuous, but it contained an astonishing explosive power. It exploded with a loud bang, directly clearing away a large portion of the white clouds around it. However, Yang Zhao's figure flickered slightly, activating the Endless Transformation technique. He changed between the real and the illusory. After he recovered, he immediately disappeared again with the help of the Heaven Ascension technique and the white clouds. Accompanied by the misty song, the white clouds once again densely covered Lu Xiaofeng. Looking at Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Zhao's cold face showed a hint of a smile. Wan Zhengluan was defeated by Lu Xiaofeng in the past. After returning to the mountain, although he was ashamed to talk about it, he still knew the severity of the matter. He honestly reported the process of his fight with Lu Xiaofeng. On one hand, it was because of his personality, and on the other hand, it was because of his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Lu Xiaofeng cultivated the divine technique of the Book of Tao of Heaven. It was called the Wandering Qi of the Heavenly Meridian, and it was an escape technique. And Lu Xiaofeng was also one of the 3 most powerful escape techniques among the second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong at the same level of cultivation. Yang Zhao had indeed heard about Lu Xiaofeng's general situation from Wan Zhengluan. Although he had not seen it with his own eyes, he knew the subtlety of Lu Xiaofeng's escape technique. In fact, in the beginning, Yang Zhao's target of challenge was not Lu Xiaofeng, but Yang Tai. Whether it was what he had heard about Yang Tai's cultivation and strength in the past, or what he had done when facing the turbulent flow of spiritual energy, Yang Zhao was well aware of it. Generally speaking, when facing Yang Tai, the headache was secondary. The key was that they would fight very sullenly, very vexed, and have no place to use their strength. Many people felt that they would rather fight head-on with Tang Jun, Han Yang, and Zhou Yunsong than to slowly grind with Yang Tai. Although it was said that attacking was the real initiative, and defending for a long time was bound to make mistakes, Yang Tai's past experience had fully proved this point. When the difference in cultivation was not too big, most of the time, it was he who exhausted his opponent to death. This included some opponents whose cultivation and strength were originally above his. If he could win, his opponent might still have the mood to slowly grind with him. But the problem was that there was a 99% chance that he would not win. However, it just so happened that Yang Zhao had the patience to slowly grind with Yang Tai. In a certain sense, Yang Zhao's favorite opponent was Yang Tai's type. People like Tang Jun, Zhou Yunsong, and Han Yang, who were good at strong attacks, Yang Zhao had no chance of winning against them. And if his opponent was Lu Xiaofeng, Yang Zhao was actually not afraid. Based on the situation Wan Zhengluan had reported, Lu Xiaofeng was not good at strong attacks. It was just that if he used the heavenly meridian wandering qi to fight slowly, it would be difficult for Yang Zhao to defeat him. Therefore, infuriating Lu Xiaofeng and luring him into the trap that he had weaved was in Yang Zhao's interest. Then, Yang Zhao would gradually show weakness, and his external emotions would also change from arrogance to panic, giving Lu Xiaofeng the illusion that success was right in front of him, and thus leading Lu Xiaofeng to continue attacking, which he was not good at. From the first conversation after confirming that his opponent was Lu Xiaofeng, the trap had already been set, waiting for Lu Xiaofeng to barge into it. He kept struggling, and the more he struggled, the tighter the trap became. Chapter 1007. Yang Zhao cast the Misty Supreme Song Technique, Heaven Ascension Technique, Infinite Transformation, and other magical powers together. His body was hidden among the white clouds, ethereal and unpredictable. Lu Xiaofeng urged the Sun-Real Fire to attack the enemy, washing away the surrounding layers of white clouds. It seemed that Yang Zhao could only helplessly repair the surrounding clouds. For a moment he could only parry but not fight back. The golden light of the true sun fire exploded, and a patch of cloud qi was completely destroyed. It seemed like it wouldn't take long before Yang Zhao's supernatural power was completely broken. Perhaps, with just a little more effort, it could completely destroy his luck. On the other hand, Yang Zhao could only barely hold on. He seemed to be in a precarious situation, as if Lu Xiaofeng could break through his defense at any time. Looking at the course of the battle, it seemed that Yang Zhao, who was constantly repairing the white clouds, consumed more magic power. Although he was in the late Golden Elixir realm, compared to Lu Xiaofeng, who was in the middle Golden Elixir realm, he did not seem to have an obvious advantage in terms of total magic power. Moreover, according to most situations, if one defended for a long time, he would lose. Defense was always passive. As long as one was not careful, it was possible to lose everything, and all the previous efforts would be in vain. But was this really the case? At the very least, Yang Zhao was very satisfied with the current situation, as his figure was hidden among the white clouds, drifting and untraceable. In fact, when he cast the Misty Supreme Song Technique, the burden on his magic power was very low. This was also one of the strengths of this magical power. On the contrary, if Lu Xiaofeng kept attacking like this, his magic power would be consumed much faster than Yang Zhao's, and it would not take long for his magic power to be exhausted. As for the possibility that Lu Xiaofeng might break his magical power before his magic power was exhausted and his attack weakened, Yang Zhao was not worried. If it were Tang Jun in the middle stage of Golden Elixir, Yang Zhao wouldn't have the confidence to defeat him. But through the previous fight, he was sure that Lu Xiaofeng was indeed unable to break his magic by force. Even if he used the Sun-Real Fire to activate the last of the 8 laws of heaven and earth, it would still be the same. Since that was the case, the situation had always been under his control. However, from a bystander's point of view, the person who was treading on thin ice was Yang Zhao, and the situation was extremely unfavorable for him. A late-stage Golden Elixir cultivator was being suppressed by an intermediate-stage Golden Elixir cultivator, which was quite embarrassing. But for Yang Zhao, the final victory was the most important. It made no difference to him whether he won the battle or turned defeat into victory. As for the possibility that after Lu Xiaofeng noticed something strange, he suddenly jumped out of the circle and did not fight, using the previous victory to show off. This possibility was naturally considered by Yang Zhao. Firstly, through Wan Zhengluan's previous description of Lu Xiaofeng and Yang Zhao's own observation, Lu Xiaofeng seemed to be casual, but in fact, he was quite tough and disdained to use such means. Secondly, if Lu Xiaofeng really did so, Yang Zhao also had a way to deal with it. In the case that Lu Xiaofeng had a strong attack and his magic power had been greatly consumed, if he had the intention to retreat, Yang Zhao might take advantage of it. However, seeing that although Lu Xiaofeng's expression was calm as usual, there was a faint manic impatience in his eyes, Yang Zhao smiled slightly. The situation was developing in the direction he hoped for the most. If Lu Xiaofeng continued to attack like this, the later he noticed the problem, the more he would consume. At that time, even if he wanted to withdraw, he would not be able to do so. Especially after seeing that Lu Xiaofeng's attack was not fully successful, his fellow disciple, Li Xingfei, also showed a look of pity on her face. Seeing this scene, the corners of Yang Zhao's mouth curled into an almost imperceptible smile. This was a battle where the onlookers had a clear view of the situation. Although Li Xingfei did not speak, her magic power aura, spiritual sense, and thoughts would more or less affect Lu Xiaofeng, whose Tao came from the same source as her. This kind of influence was very small, like a gust of wind in the outside environment, or a little higher humidity in the air, almost undetectable. But the more inconspicuous this kind of change was, the more it could have a subtle effect. It was silent and had an effect unconsciously. It was possible that Lu Xiaofeng's emotions would be infected and he would become more anxious. The battle was still in a stalemate. After activating the Sun Real Fire again to sweep away the smoke around him, Lu Xiaofeng finally frowned, looking at the layers of white clouds in front of him, showing a look of hesitation. After a few more rounds of attack, his attack suddenly slowed down. His eyes flashed, silently perceiving the layers of white clouds around him. The next moment, Lu Xiaofeng frowned. Although his expression was calm as usual, without any clues, his eyes faintly showed struggle and unwillingness. Finally, after launching another round of attack, Lu Xiaofeng's figure suddenly flashed, flying out of the clouds. Your reaction is quite fast, but unfortunately, it's already too late. Yang Zhao smiled coldly. You cultivators of Xianmen Tianzong also pay attention to practical benefits. Not all of you are so arrogant, are you? He also felt a little pity in his heart. Lu Xiaofeng chose to withdraw immediately, using the advantage he had on the surface, and then give up. In this way, at least he still had some strength left, and it would be difficult for Yang Zhao to obtain a complete victory. After all, although Yang Zhao had a backup plan, his own attacking ability was actually not strong. Seeing that Lu Xiaofeng had withdrawn, Yang Zhao did not dare to delay. If he let Lu Xiaofeng jump out of the fighting ring, then his previous hard work would be in vain. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, he would really become a pig. He made an incantation gesture with both hands, and the faintly discernible white clouds that enveloped the two suddenly condensed. In an instant, the vast clouds seemed to have condensed into a solid form, extremely hard, and completely sealed off the space in this part of the world. Be it himself or Lu Xiaofeng, both of them seemed to have become little bugs frozen in amber, unable to move or struggle free. Watching the battle from the side, Mu Xian, Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang and the others raised their eyebrows. Heavenly Abyss-Shattering Cloud Technique. Taishu Temple's direct disciples were naturally aware of the ethereal supreme song's characteristic of conserving magical power. Even those who did not cultivate the Grand Wangqing Dao knew about it. Naturally, they also knew that there was another spell in the Grand Wangqing Dao called the Heavenly Abyss-Shattering Cloud Technique. The Grand Wangqing Dao merged the various great Daos of heaven and earth, and was mysterious and unpredictable. One of them was the Grand Nirvana Dao. Right now, outside Ding of Shenzhou, Xianlin Taoist, who was in a standoff with Lin Feng and Wang Lin with Shoichi Daoshan, had his Dao integration fruit that stemmed from the Grand Nirvana Dao. Under the Grand Nirvana Dao, there were other branches. One of them was called the Grand Shattering Dao, and the Heavenly Abyss-Shattering Cloud Technique was a derivative spell of the Grand Shattering Dao. With the activation of the remarkable power spell, the vast white clouds directly shattered the void, causing the surrounding space to shatter. Although Yang Zhao was not adept at forceful attacks, he had enveloped Lu Xiaofeng within the white clouds and used the Heavenly Abyss-Shattering Cloud Technique to shatter both the inside and the outside. Its power was rather considerable. At this moment, Lu Xiaofeng was attempting to withdraw and retreat. Facing the Heavenly Abyss-Shattering Cloud Technique that was attacking both inside and outside, even if he still had energy left, it was not easy. Yang Zhao was also within the white clouds, and his body would also be affected by the Heavenly Abyss-Shattering Cloud Technique. However, firstly, he was the one casting the spell, and secondly, he was already prepared. Naturally, it was much easier for him than Lu Xiaofeng. Just as Lu Xiaofeng was exhausted from dealing with the heavenly abyss-shattering cloud technique, his follow-up attacks followed up. Order! Yang Zhao let out a low cry, and the white clouds enveloping the two of them immediately started to shatter. However, at this moment, he suddenly saw that Lu Xiaofeng had turned to look at him. There was a hint of a smile on the other party's face. "I've been waiting for you." An ominous feeling rose in Yang Zhao's heart. What made him feel even more ominous was that Li Xingfei, who was watching the battle from the outside, had suddenly started laughing as well. Lu Xiaofeng looked at Yang Zhao, a carefree and unruly expression on his face. He smiled leisurely and said, "Now I believe that your earlier nonsense was not meant to sow discord between us. From the start, you only wanted to provoke me and make me lose my cool. The subsequent provocation was actually also to disrupt my thoughts, to make me continue to sink into anxiety and anger, to make me feel indignant, and to make me anxious to prove myself and retaliate against your provocation." The singing of the ethereal grand hymn had completely stopped. Amidst the white clouds, Yang Zhao's face was faintly discernible, his face expressionless. Lu Xiaofeng's palms suddenly joined together, and a dazzling golden light appeared on his left wrist, extending outwards like a huge bow. The more I relied on my strength to attack, the more I actually gave up on my own strength and escape techniques, and used my own weakness to compete with you. Lu Xiaofeng's right hand pulled on the golden bow in his left hand, as if drawing a bow and notching an arrow. "I fought with Wan Zhongluan before, so you know from him that my escape techniques and movement techniques are not bad. I'm good at guerrilla warfare, but I'm not good at forceful attacks." A dazzling golden arrow appeared on the bow. The tip of the arrow was incomparably dazzling, and the true fire of the sun condensed like never before. It was like a golden sun, and its terrifying might caused Yang Zhao's heart to sink to the bottom. Xianmen Tianzong Fen Tianya's Dao technique, the mystical ability of the Burning Heaven mantra, the Burning Heaven divine light. It could be used to be refined with any kind of true fire, and its destructive power was extremely shocking when it targeted a single point. But the problem is, how did you know that when I fought with Wan Zhongluan back then, I had used my full strength? Lu Xiaofeng looked at Yang Zhao and laughed softly. "If you had continued to hide, this arrow of mine might have been able to break your previous technique, but I don't have full confidence that it would be able to completely finish you off. Now that you've stopped on your own, I couldn't have asked for more. I can tell that this new technique of yours is quite powerful, but it has a weakness, and that is, the speed at which it is cast is too slow. It can't compare to mine." Before he finished speaking, a golden divine arrow was released from the bowstring, dragging a long golden tail of flames behind it. Like a golden meteor, it pierced through the seemingly solidified clouds. As if the clouds had parted to reveal the sun, the layers of white clouds dispersed, and a dazzling golden flame spread out, forming a blazing sun in the sky. Yang Zhao could no longer care about using the heavenly abyss-shattering clouds mantra, and hurriedly performed the infinite transformation technique, attempting to evade Lu Xiaofeng's burning heaven divine light. But the flames that exploded turned into a golden blazing sun, burning in the sky for a long time. Yang Zhao could only watch in despair as his figure gradually returned to reality from the illusory realm of nothingness, and was then slowly engulfed by the golden blazing sun. Chapter 1008. Lu Xiaofeng's heaven-burning divine light shot out, and the void was like a golden sun rising. The rolling golden fire burned continuously, like the sun in the middle of the sky, roasting everything in the world and engulfing Yang Zhao, who had retreated from the infinite illusion technique. A large amount of white clouds evaporated and disappeared. The infinite illusion technique of the Taishu Temple was extremely mysterious. It could place a cultivator in between reality and illusion, avoid the opponent's attack, and make the opponent's magical power unable to touch the body. No matter how powerful the attack was, if it could not hit the target, everything would be in vain. However, this technique also had many drawbacks. The user's cultivation base was not at the primordial spirit realm. When the infinite illusion technique was used, the user's body would turn real into illusion and hide in the infinite illusion realm. When he returned to reality and returned to this side of the world, his position would still stay in the original place. and the time that the cultivators in the golden elixir period stayed in the void realm was very short. Therefore, Yang Zhao could only watch helplessly as he was engulfed by the exploding heaven-burning divine light, and suffered the burning of the true fire of the sun. I've been tricked. Yang Zhao sighed in his heart. He had schemed against Lu Xiaofeng, but in the end, he was schemed against by Lu Xiaofeng. To be precise, there was also Li Xingfei. Looking at Li Xingfei's mocking smile, how could Yang Zhao not know that she had shown obvious emotional fluctuations at the beginning, and it was intentional? Doing so naturally was not to affect Lu Xiaofeng's state of mind. On the contrary, it was to cooperate with Lu Xiaofeng to interfere with Yang Zhao's judgment. The person who walked step by step into the trap, and finally fell into his own trap, was not Lu Xiaofeng, but him. After he understood all of this, Yang Zhao felt quite regretful in his heart. If he had used the Misty Supreme Song technique to deal with Lu Xiaofeng, even though he might not have been able to defend against Lu Xiaofeng's heaven-burning divine ray, at least he would have had the leeway to continue the battle. He wouldn't have been defeated like he was now, with no room for a comeback. Seeing that Yang Zhao was about to be engulfed by the raging inferno, Chen Xingyu, Mu Xian, and Guo Chaoyang frowned slightly. Guo Chaoyang suddenly moved and came to Yang Zhao's side. As he waved his sleeves, two streams of transcendence energy, one black and one white, circled around, dispersing the raging solar true fire. Because they had agreed to only fight with magical powers, and not to compete with external objects, both Yang Zhao and Lu Xiaofeng had handed over their magical tools and talismans to Yang Tai and Guo Chaoyang before they started fighting. So now, Yang Zhao was facing a disaster, and he didn't even have the power to protect himself. Junior brother Yang has lost this battle, Yang Kai said with a smile. Guo Chaoyang snorted coldly, only dispersing the solar true fire that was attacking Yang Zhao, and didn't take the opportunity to attack Lu Xiaofeng. Lu Xiaofeng didn't take it too far. He cupped his hands toward Guo Chaoyang and Yang Zhao, who only survived because of his help. Thank you for letting me win. It's just the first round, Guo Chaoyang said calmly, his face as gloomy as still water. Hearing this, Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei raised their eyebrows slightly. Zhou Yunsong was still expressionless, staring coldly at Guo Chaoyang. Outside the little Kelowna world, Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin had witnessed the whole process of the battle. At their level, no matter in terms of strength or status, the battle of magical powers between the practitioners in the golden elixir period, no matter how exquisite it was hardly worth paying attention to. For Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin, it was more about observing the spirit, qi, and spirit of the younger generation, as well as the potential they showed. With a calm expression, Shoichi Daishin said lightly, "Congratulations, sect leader Lin, for having a successor." Lin Feng also looked calm. Shoichi Daishin is flattering me. The younger generation does have their merits, but they also need more experience. Regarding the performance of his own disciples, Lin Feng was neither modest nor flattering them. His comments were also straightforward and simple. The great devil doppelgangers of Xianlin Taoist and Wang Lin stood behind their respective elders. They were silent, staring at each other in silence. Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin had been wrestling through the little Kelowna world transformed by Ding of Shenzhou. At this moment, the periphery of the little Kelowna world was gradually shrouded by a mass of purple qi and a mass of white qi. The two sides were clearly separated, each occupying half of the little Kelowna world. One of the dragon claws of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger, and one of the palm of the god of war doppelganger, were currently placed on the little Kelowna world. His expression did not change, but his eyes flickered slightly. The purple qi that covered the little Kelowna world began to permeate the interior of the world. Almost at the same time, Shoichi Daishin did the same. The white qi also began to permeate the interior of the little Kelowna world, causing the interior of the little Kelowna world to be covered in white mist. Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, Guo Chaoyang, Chen Xingyu, Mu Xian, and the others who were confronting each other all looked at the world that suddenly began to change in front of them. They were on full alert. All of a sudden, the vast purple and white qi intertwined, causing the heaven and earth to tremble. Yang Tai and the others were immersed in the qi world. The scenery before their eyes suddenly changed. It was as if they were riding on the clouds, shuttling through the interior of the little Kelowna world. The scenery before their eyes kept changing. It looked familiar and strange at the same time. Yang Tai, Zhou Yinsong, and the others saw the Kunlun mountain range that they were very familiar with. They saw the vast East Sea, the southern wasteland, and the snowy plains of the north. However, their final destination was a mountain that they had never seen before. However, although they had never been here before, Yang Tai and the other Xianmen Tianzong disciples could still recognize where they were based on the landscape and landmarks along the way. This should be the mountain gate of the Taishu Temple, where the White Cloud Mountain is located. Yang Tai, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei looked at each other. They were all surprised. Why were we sent here? What is this? Even the group of Taishu Temple disciples was a little surprised when they saw the familiar scenery before them. Outside of Ding of Shenzhou, Lin Feng, Shuichi Dashan, Wang Lin, and Xianlin Taoist looked at the scene calmly. Wang Lin mumbled to himself, "Master, it is just as Jian Songtian and Yin Xiantian said. The White Cloud Mountain is really the spiritual energy flow center of the divine land in the past." Lin Feng nodded. This is the place that laid the foundation for the rise of the Taishu Temple. If it wasn't for the changes in the world and the spiritual energy flow in the divine land becoming chaotic, the Taishu Temple would be even stronger now. Even so, after entering the primeval era, the strength of the Taishu Temple surged once. It had the aura of when it was at its peak. It was just that time and fate coincided with the arrival of the Yuhuang Heavenly Sea. This is also the place where the Haotian mirror appeared. Wang Lin narrowed his eyes as he stared at the interior of the little Kelowna world floating in the light. He stared at the lonely mountain that was not shrouded by clouds, and revealed its original appearance. Lin Feng nodded. That's right. The greatest impact of the war that ended the primeval era was not the division of the Great Thousand World into the Divine Land and Infinite Wasteland world, but the birth of the Haotian mirror. Many things were gradually becoming difficult to verify, and were buried in the long river of history. Even if there were some sects that had existed since the primeval era, many secrets had gradually been lost. As the predecessors passed away, there were some secrets that the current successors did not know about. Only Tsangtian Daojian and the Xiantian seal, which were already Mahayana-grade magic treasures in the primeval age, could participate in many important gatherings and knew a lot of information. They did not encounter any calamities and could live until now, so they knew many secrets of that time. Although he had heard similar rumors in the past, rumors were just rumors. It was only after he came into contact with the Tsangtian Daojian and the Xiantian seal that Lin Feng understood some things. For example, the Haotian mirror was actually not an enchanted treasure refined by the cultivators of the Taishu Temple. More accurately speaking, it was not an enchanted treasure refined by anyone. This number one enchanted treasure of heaven origin was truly nurtured by the heavens. It was created by the great heaven origin world with the essence of Zhong Daqian's creation. It was different from the light ball that was still boiling in the Yin-Yang Sea. And it was also different from Zhu Yi's Paramitha Bridge. The embryo came from the Yingzhou celestial mountain in the Ying Sea, which guided the power of the Ying Sea to nurture it. The clear sky mirror was a magic treasure nurtured by the entire Tianyuan world. The war during the end of the primeval age had caused the Great Thousand World to be divided into two worlds, the Divine Land and Infinite Wasteland world. Other than Jua Huang Xianshang, the Taishu Taoist, and the Grand Emperor, the more important reason was that the Haotian mirror had been born from the entire Great Heaven origin world. With the birth of the Haotian mirror, the Great Thousand World had finally been split into two worlds. In truth, the great battle between Jua Huang and the Taishu Taoist had caused the Haotian mirror to be born ahead of time. If the treasure had been born naturally, its power would have been even more unimaginable. Of course, if that had happened, no one would have been able to truly obtain the treasure, unless that person could transcend the entire Great Heaven origin world. And the place where the Haotian mirror had been born, in the current era, was where the Taishu Temple was located, White Cloud Mountain. It was also for this reason that the Taishu Taoist had chosen to establish his sect here in the end, establishing the eternal foundation of the Taishu Temple. At that time, White Cloud Mountain was the center of the Divine Land's spirit chi. The spirit chi of the world had gathered together. But as time passed, the flow of the spirit qi of the Great Thousand World began to change. Instead of gathering at the center, it began to spread out. But in ancient times, White Cloud Mountain was the undisputed center of the divine land. This center wasn't the center of the land, but the place where the spirit qi of the world gathered, and where it was most abundant. When Emperor Xia refined the divine prefecture cauldron in the ancient times, he integrated the heavy true will of earth of the vast land of the divine prefecture into it, so that the internal flow of the spiritual qi in the small divine prefecture world, which was formed by the spiritual power of the magic treasure of creation, was naturally similar to the vast land of the divine prefecture in the ancient times. Therefore, Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin had cast a spell at the same time, sending their disciples to the core area of Ding of Shenzhou. They were then sent to the foot of White Cloud Mountain in the inner part of the Little Kelowna world. Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong, Lu Xiaofeng, and Li Xingfei calmed themselves down, and soon realized that there were people who had already arrived. Some of them had found themselves, while others had been sent by Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin. Upon closer inspection, Xianmen Tianzong and the cultivators of the Taishu Temple were almost all present. Chapter 1009. In front of Baiyun Mountain in Little Kelowna World, Xianmen Tianzong and the cultivators of Taishu Temple were facing each other. Other than Yang Tai and the other three, Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qinggu, Tang Jun, and Han Yang had also landed in front of the mountain. However, Zhu Yi was nowhere to be seen. The younger disciples of Taishu Temple were also present. Shan Xiang looked ashamed while Zhao Mingxiu looked slightly sad. When they saw Yang Zhao, they thought of Wan Zhengluan who had died. The three of them looked at each other speechlessly. The peak. Yu Hongyan's eyes flickered as he looked at the peak of Baiyun Mountain in front of him. The others also looked in the direction of the peak. They saw spots of light flashing there. Although it was not noticeable, it was extremely mysterious. If one did not pay attention, they would not notice it at all. However, once they saw the light, it immediately attracted everyone's attention, as if it could suck their souls into it. Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qinggu looked at each other. Its second senior brother. As the light flashed on the peak, spots of starlight sprinkled down. The majestic aura did not leak, but everyone could feel the vast power contained in it. It was like the starry sky of the universe. It was Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger. At this moment, he was fighting with someone at the peak of Baiyun Mountain in Little Kelowna World. His opponent was a middle-aged man with a calm expression and a handsome face. He was the supreme elder of Taishu Temple, Kai Fengzhou. Both of them had arrived at the peak of Baiyun Mountain first, and had been fighting for some time. In fact, Kai Fengzhou was quite puzzled. He knew about the foundation of Ding of Shenzhou, and the general situation of Xia Huang's sacrificial refining of Ding of Shenzhou. He knew that the heavy earth essence of the divine land was integrated into it. Therefore, the core of Ding of Shenzhou was inside the Little Kelowna world, which was the center of the divine land. It was not the center of the land, but the center where spiritual energy gathered. It was similar to the real divine land in ancient times. It was exactly where Baiyun Mountain was. However, when Kai Fengzhou arrived, he found that Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger was slightly faster than him. If he did not know the inside information, Zhu Yi would have already officially come into contact with Ding of Shenzhou. Hao Yang's doppelganger's facial features were almost the same as Zhu Yi's. However, when he unleashed his martial arts supernatural powers, his fists cracked the heavens and the earth, and his palms could push mountains and fill up the seas. Kai Fengzhou's expression was as calm as usual. Two clouds, one black and one white, were like two divine dragons shuttling in the void. He had a mild temperament, but when he unleashed supernatural powers and spells, the momentum was extremely fierce and sharp. It was just that he did not have much killing intent. Even so, it was still extremely fierce. If Zhu Yi was not careful, he would immediately suffer a great loss. The same supernatural power, because the cultivator's understanding was different, could be unleashed in a completely different style. Kai Fengzhou's lineage traced back to the head of the four heroes of Taishu, Wen Qiang. Not only was he recognized as the strongest among the four heroes of Taishu, But he was also the most incisive person in actual combat. The style of his supernatural power was the path of fierceness and sharpness. Although it was not completely different from the usual ethereal and carefree feeling of the Taishu Temple, it was still unique and its characteristics were obvious. Kai Fengzhou had a mild temperament, but his cultivation of the supernatural power was more or less influenced by his lineage. However, he was also a great cultivator of the Tao integration realm, and his understanding of the supernatural power had been integrated into it. Therefore, when he unleashed his spells, he was actually much gentler. Wu Mingqi, who was from the same lineage as him, unleashed supernatural power even more fiercely than him. However, no matter how gentle he was, Kai Fengzhou was also a Tao integration expert who had been famous for many years. Moreover, Wen Qiang's lineage had always attached great importance to actual combat. As Kai Fengzhou's hands changed hand seals, streams of dermic power that blended yin and yang surged out, stirring up the void. Layers of space overlapped, and the originally shapeless void transformed into a large bell that covered the head of Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger. It was a top-notch great supernatural power of the lineage of the void yin yang Tao infinite yin, and yang wonderful world of void. It could turn the power of the void into a wonderful world, suppress the enemy, and then refine the enemy with the endless power of yin and yang. As far as Kai Fengzhou was concerned, he didn't have a strong hatred for Xianmen Tianzong, and he didn't want to fight with Zhu Yi to death. However, Ding of Shenzhou was involved, so he couldn't afford to be careless. Although he didn't know the fight between Lin Feng and Shoichi Dashin outside, he was sure that this was the core area of Ding of Shenzhou. If Zhu Yi got his hands on it, he would definitely lose the upper hand. Of course, Zhu Yi wouldn't just wait for death. However, although Hao Yang's doppelganger was powerful and the Astro Sovereign's martial arts were overbearing, he was only at the void return level after all. Facing Kai Fengzhou, who was a Tao reunion cultivator from the Taishu Temple, he was still not strong enough. Hao Yang's doppelganger couldn't escape from the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void. Instead, its dermic power was being worn down by the power of yin and yang in this small world. Good. Zhu Yi's expression didn't change. He shouted in a low voice. As the dermic power surged all over Hao Yang's doppelganger, his eyes suddenly changed. One eye was extremely dark, and the other eye was extremely dark. As the light and dark reversed, many alternating bright and dark characters appeared in the void. These characters of light and dark wrote a shocking chapter together. Then, they turned into a shocking golden bridge, which appeared out of nowhere and directly hit Kai Fengzhou's infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void. Endless chanting sounded along with the appearance of the golden bridge, which kept echoing between heaven and earth. It carried on the past and opened up the future, transcended everything, passed on everything, and brought everyone in the world to the nirvana world. For a moment, it seemed that the world created by Kai Fengzhou, a Tao reunion cultivator, couldn't stop Zhu Yi's golden bridge, which seemed to be leading the world. After years of continuous cultivation and study, Zhu Yi could also use the dermic spells of the Book of Tao Deity that he had learned from the Book of Tao Deity, through Hao Yang's doppelganger. Although it wasn't as agile and sharp as the real body, it still shouldn't be underestimated. Even Kai Fengzhou's infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void couldn't stop the surging momentum. Under the impact of the golden bridge, it kept shaking. A doppelganger also has such a remarkable technique. It's really extraordinary. Kai Fengzhou sighed and stretched out his palms in front of him, palms facing each other. The black and white airflows around his body, which were like long dragons, spiraled from the left and right sides and converged in the center of his palms, forming a whirlpool that kept spinning. This whirlpool kept spinning, and in the end, it gradually transformed into a strange light ball that looked like a heavy fruit. Countless talismans of the Grand Tao surged out from within the fruit, and they emanated a powerful concept that was boundlessly vast and filled with boundless energy. It caused the heavens and the earth within the small divine prefecture world to tremble. It was Kai Fengzhou who had activated his own Tao fruit, the yin-yang cycle Tao fruit. This Tao fruit's color was intertwined with black and white, as if countless tiny black and white stripes were rolled together. However, every stripe was clear, and there wasn't a trace of mixing between black and white. It didn't blend, but it reflected a perfect combination that was mysterious and unfathomable. Kai Fengzhou's palms gently separated, and his yin-yang cycle Dao fruit fell onto the world formed by the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void and merged with it. The golden bridge formed by Zhu Yi's Saints chapter was about to break free from the shackles before it, but the world it was in suddenly changed. The yin and yang energies that densely covered the world suddenly started spinning, and the entire world turned into a huge cyclone that kept spinning. Heaven and earth seemed to be separated, turning into two parts, one top and one bottom, with Zhu Yi sandwiched in the middle. The huge whirlpool, the top and bottom parts, spun at the same time, but in opposite directions. It was as if the world had turned into a huge millstone. With every spin, the huge power grew. As the millstone spun, the power grew. There seemed to be no end to the growth of the power, as if there would never be a limit. With yin and yang as the pushing force, with the world as the millstone, it wanted to crush everything that was sandwiched in between. This was the Dharma spell of the great Tao that was on par with the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void yin-yang crush, heaven and earth grind. The same Dharma spell used by different people was like the difference between clouds and mud. Bai Shiqian could not compare to Qin Xingyu, and there was no comparison between Qin Xingyu and Kai Feng-o. When Kai Feng-o executed the yin-yang crush, heaven and earth grind Dharma spell, even Zhu Yi's Hao-yang clone felt like it could not withstand it. It was as if it was about to be crushed bit by bit. The speed was not fast, but it was filled with an unstoppable feeling, making one feel tormented and despair. In particular, Kai Fengzhou was using the infinite yin and yang wonderful world of void as the foundation. When he executed the yin-yang crush, heaven and earth grind Dharma spell, it was equivalent to combining the two Dharma spells into one, reaching a new height that ordinary people could not imagine. Even a Tao integration stage expert would find it difficult to resist the power of the perfect combination of the two top-notch Dharma spells of the void yin-yang Tao. Under such terrifying power, the golden bridge formed by the chapter of the saints written by Zhu Yi's Hao-yang clone was also on the verge of collapse. The grand intention of guiding all living beings to transcend heaven and earth was now faced with the danger of being suppressed by the entire world. Furthermore, this world could be completely destroyed at any time. The great terror and power contained within it would make one feel even more fearful. It's not my true body after all. Zhu Yi's expression was the same as usual. He only shook his head lightly and pointed his right index finger at his glabella. My true body is here. Even if I don't use the Per-Mi-Tha Golden Bridge, let's have another battle. Just as Zhu Yi was about to use the Void Realm Mystic Technique, his eyes suddenly flickered, and Kai Fengzhou also frowned. The void in the distance suddenly split open, and a figure suddenly rushed in front of Kai Fengzhou at a speed that was difficult for the naked eye to capture, and punched out. The newcomer was tall and burly, handsome, and dressed in purple robes. It was Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao's speed was extremely fast, and his powerful physical strength erupted. He was no longer traveling through the void, but directly crushing the void. He was so domineering that he could not even be bothered to travel through the void. Anything that blocked his way, including the invisible space, would be torn apart. Kai Fengzhou's heart skipped a beat. Even with his dharmic power and divine sense, he felt that Shi Tianhao's movements were extremely fast. With a thought, Kai Fengzhou raised his palm and slapped down, blocking Shi Tianhao's iron fist. The 9 heavens of Taishu technique, the 4 heavens of Taishu, and the universal sacred hand, the strongest martial arts magic of the Taishu temple. Under the violent collision, the endless vitality in the void above White Cloud Mountain collapsed, and the heaven and earth trembled slightly. Spiritual chi flowed chaotically, and the interior of the little Kelowna world seemed to have caved in because of the collision between the two. Shi Tianhao's tall and burly body swayed in the air, and his forward momentum suddenly stopped, and he almost lost his footing. Kai Fengzhou, on the other hand, was sent flying backward by him. Even the attack that was aimed at Zhu Yi and Hao Yang's doppelganger below was difficult to continue. Chapter 10:10. Kai Fengzhou forcefully blocked Shi Tianhao's punch, and his body flew backward from the impact. For a moment, his primordial spirit could no longer maintain its human form, and turned into a black and white whirlpool similar to the yin-yang will Dao fruit. But after a moment, he regained his balance. This lad's physical strength is really strong. Even a great demon in the integration of the astral soul realm is only SOSO. Seeing Shi Tianhao here, and then looking at Zhu Yi, Kai Fengzhou could not help but sigh in his heart. Shi Tianhao stood still and smiled. Second senior brother, there's no need to waste your real body's time. Just leave this to me, you can go up the mountain. He twisted his neck, looked at Kai Fengzhou and nodded. The Taishu mystic technique is indeed extraordinary. Now in terms of pure physical strength, many great demons in the integration of the astral soul realm were not as good as Shi Tianhao. Kai Fengzhou performed the universal sacred palm, and was sent flying backward by him. And his primordial spirit almost became unstable. However, Kai Fengzhou was a Dharma cultivator after all. Physical strength and martial arts fighting were not his forte. He was repelled by Shi Tianhao, and his attack on Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger had to be interrupted. Zhu Yi escaped and stared at Kai Fengzhou. Just now, when he was trapped by Kai Fengzhou's spell, with Zhu Yi's personality, he naturally wanted to get back at him. However, through the exchange just now, Zhu Yi could already confirm that his Haoyang doppelganger was not a match for Kai Fengzhou. If he wanted to settle the score with Kai Fengzhou, he needed to replace his real body. However, firstly, the effect of the two realms void seconds technique would be affected by the power of the boundaries. Secondly, Zhu Yi's original body was roaming the heavens. At this moment he happened to encounter a fortuitous encounter, so it would be a pity to leave. Therefore, after frowning slightly, he still nodded. There's still time. Zhu Yi looked at Shi Tianhao and said, "Little junior brother, I'll leave it to you." With that, he descended towards White Cloud Mountain in Little Kelowna World. Kai Fengzhou shook his head. "Please wait a moment." He put his palms together lightly, and streams of black and white intertwined magic power surged, covering the entire world. Shi Tianhao raised his eyebrows. "Are you going to fight both of us at once?" He suddenly took a step forward, shattering the void as he charged towards Kai Fengzhou once again. Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger also turned around and stopped. He straightened his palm and waved it horizontally, cutting off a black and white airflow in front of him. "I wouldn't do this anywhere else, but this is White Cloud Mountain," Kai Fengzhou smiled. "Even if it's only White Cloud Mountain created by Ding of Shenzhou." Hearing that, Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's hearts stirred at the same time. Then they saw Kai Fengzhou floating between the heavens and the earth, and streams of magic power that resembled black and white silk entwined around White Cloud Mountain. White Cloud Mountain's aura instantly fluctuated slightly. White Cloud Mountain's movement caused the flow of spirit energy in the entire Little Kelowna world to fluctuate as well. A large amount of spirit energy gathered towards White Cloud Mountain, and gradually turned into a white cloud pillar that soared into the sky. Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger wanted to get closer, but it was blocked by the white cloud pillar. Meanwhile, Kai Fengzhou himself was fighting against Shi Tianhao. What Wang Lin knew, Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao naturally knew as well. When Xia Huang sacrificially refined Ding of Shenzhou, Taishu Temple had already been developing in White Cloud Mountain for many years. They were very familiar with the flow of spirit energy fluctuations in the Divine Land at that time. This was the place where Taishu Temple established its Tao. Whether it was the first Taishu Taoist or later Taishu Temple cultivators, when they were perfecting and organizing their own Tao techniques, they would naturally have a connection with the special situation of White Cloud Mountain. In today's vast thousand domains and the vast land of the Divine Land, these might not be of much use. However, in the Divine Land Cauldron, which was transformed from the spiritual power of the Divine Land Cauldron, and was similar to the vast land of the Divine Land in ancient times, it was still useful. Kai Fengzhou made a hand seal with his left hand and flicked his right hand. A small white wooden stick the length of a palm flew out of his hand, and landed in the void. The wooden stick grew in the wind and instantly turned into a huge wooden pillar that was more than 10,000 feet long. The surface of this huge white wooden pillar was engraved with auspicious clouds that exuded a powerful aura of Dharma power. It was a magic treasure of transformation level that Kai Fengzhou carried with him. Although it had not reached the Mahayana realm, it still had great power. With Kai Fengzhou, a Tao integration realm expert, driving the magic cloud pillar, it was even more magical. With the help of the spirit cloud pillar, Kai Fengzhou stalled Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger. However, at the same time, he could not go down to White Cloud Mountain. Mu Xian, Xingyu, Chaoyang, take the others up the mountain, and enter the belly of the mountain from the top. There is no key point there. At Kai Fengzhou's order, Mu Xian, Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and the other successors of Taishu Temple rushed up White Cloud Mountain together. Yu Hongyan's red eyebrows gradually raised. He waved his hand and took the lead to fly up White Cloud Mountain. Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, and the others followed. In order to block Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger, the spirit cloud pillar could not take care of White Cloud Mountain itself, but Kai Fengzhou would rather do so. If he had to choose between Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, or Yu Hongyan and the others, he would naturally choose to trap Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi first. As for Yu Hongyan and the others, Kai Fengzhou could only entrust them to Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and the other juniors. It would be even more difficult for them to deal with Shi Tianhao or Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger. Xianmen Tianzong and the Taishu Temple cultivators climbed to the top of White Cloud Mountain together. They saw a small clearing at the top of the mountain. Apart from that, there was nothing else. However, the Taishu Temple cultivators, who had already learned the trick from Kai Fengzhou, quickly rushed to the center of the clearing. Mu Xian, Guo Chaoyang, and Chen Xingyu stood in a triangular formation and cast their spells. Streams of transcendence energy poured into the peak of White Cloud Mountain beneath their feet. Open! The three of them shouted in unison. The spells in their hands changed, and a beam of light shot up into the sky from the center of the three. With the beam of light as the center, a huge formation gradually appeared. The formation projected into the air, revealing a light shadow that looked like a cave. Li Yuanfang's expression was calm. He closed his eyes, and purple light flickered around his body, transforming into mysterious talismans that gathered above his head. He had cast the treasure mirror formation technique. Numerous talismans quickly and accurately constructed a small and delicate magic circle in accordance with extremely complex rules. Like a round mirror, a mirror-like beam of light shone out and fell on the large magic circle in the center of the mountain peak. Time was running out. Seeing that the Taishu Temple cultivators were already trying to enter the cave, Li Yuanfang did not rely on his own senses to observe. He directly used the treasure mirror formation technique, and instantly saw the mysteries of the formation in front of him. Open! Li Yuanfang also shouted. The mirror light that the treasure mirror formation technique had cast on the opponent's formation suddenly flashed. Then, an 8 trigrams formation suddenly appeared in the center of the mirror light. The 8 trigrams formation kept expanding, and in an instant, it covered the opponent's formation. Now that his cultivation had reached the middle stage of yuanying, Li Yuanfang's cultivation in the Tao of formations was truly invincible below the primordial divinity realm. Even many primordial divinity realm cultivators were no match for him in the Tao of formations. Just now, when he cast the treasure mirror formation technique, Li Yuanfang also cast the mysterious pivot 8 trigrams formation. When this formation was cast, the cave in the air was still there, unaffected, but the control of the formation had been taken away by Li Yuanfang. The light that shrouded the formation repelled some of the Taishu Temple cultivators outside the formation. Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and a few others entered the cave at the first moment. Mu Xian was originally responsible for maintaining the formation, but unexpectedly, she was also repelled by the formation. The Taishu Temple disciples who could not enter the cave in time were all repelled by the light of the formation. Silently, Li Yuanfang said, "I'll bring up the rear, you guys go in." Yu Hongyan shook his head and said, "The situation in the cave is unknown. I'll bring up the rear, 6th junior brother, you go in and lead the team." As he spoke, a dark light flashed in his hand, and a dark green halberd appeared. It was ferocious and filled with a terrifying aura that could destroy everything. Li Yuanfang pondered for a moment. He was never a hesitant person, so he immediately nodded and said, "Okay." He turned to look at Luo Qinggu and said, "Little junior sister, you lead the way, I'll be right there." Luo Qinggu did not waste any time. She nodded and rushed into the cave first, followed by Tang Jun, Han Yang, and the others. Li Yuanfang's main body was the last to enter, But he still left his Yin spirit doppelganger to continue to maintain the formation and support Yu Hongyan. Yu Hongyan waved the army destroyer halberd in his hand and pointed it at Mu Xian and the other Taishu Temple disciples. His expression was calm, and he did not say a word. In reality, she was still not in her peak condition. In the battle to kill Blood Mane Great Sage, her right shoulder was directly pierced through by her opponent. Her tendons and bones were broken, and she lost a lot of blood. This was an extremely serious injury for a martial adept, and she needed a long time to recuperate. If she did not treat it properly, it could even cause her strength to regress. After Luo Qinggu used the life spirit sword of earth, Zhu Yi gave her a Phoenix Nirvana curse, which prevented her from having any future problems, and allowed her to continue fighting. However, it was beyond her ability to force herself to unleash her strongest power in a short period of time. But at this moment, Yu Hongyan stood with his spear in front of him. His aura of one man holding the pass against 10,000 people still shrouded the entire peak of White Cloud Mountain, and the group of Taishu Temple disciples did not dare to take a step forward. Mu Xian, Shan Xiang, and Ding Runfeng stared at Yu Hongyan. Shan Xiang's eyes were filled with uncontrollable hatred and anger, and at the same time deep fear. 10 years ago in the colossal world, it was this red-haired girl who beat his junior sister, who was also his lover, Bai Shiqian, to the brink of death. All these years, every time Shan Xiang saw Bai Shiqian, who was seriously injured, he could not suppress the anger in his heart. When he was facing the second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, such as Han Yang and Yang Tai, Shan Xiang could barely suppress it. But now that Yu Hongyan was standing in front of him, the hatred that had been accumulated for many years instantly reached its peak. Compared to Shan Xiang, Ding Runfeng felt a deep sense of helplessness and despair. It was a feeling that surpassed fear and hatred. After the battle in West Hill City, it was not that Ding Runfeng did not think of cultivating hard and fighting Yu Hongyan again. After all, strictly speaking, Bai Shiqian was actually fighting Yu Hongyan on his behalf. But at this moment, when he saw Yu Hongyan, Ding Runfeng was at a loss and dispirited. At that time, Yu Hongyan was at the early stage of Golden Elixir, while he was at the middle stage of Golden Elixir, and Bai Shiqian was at the late stage of Golden Elixir. But now, although he had successfully formed his nascent soul, the red-haired girl opposite him was already at the middle stage of Yuanying. Chapter 10-11. Junior brother Ding, calm down and concentrate. Otherwise you'll lose without even fighting, Mu Xian suddenly said. Ding Runfeng came to his senses and revealed a bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. Mu Xian looked calm as usual. She looked at Yu Hongyan indifferently and walked forward step by step. She said faintly, "The opponent has at least one magic treasure. Don't interfere in this battle." Ding Runfeng nodded lightly. Shan Xiang suddenly turned to look at Mu Xian. Mu Xian said softly, "Junior brother Shan, even I am not ready yet. But because of the Taoist technique, I can't wait any longer. You are different. You can still wait, so don't be reckless. This woman's martial arts are violent. If you lose to her, you will either die or be injured." The anger in Shan Xiang's eyes finally faded and he calmed down again. But after calming down, Shan Xiang could not help but reveal a bitter smile. He could not even beat the martial nephew of the late stage of Golden Elixir. If he went up to fight with Yu Hongyan now, he would not be able to avenge his old hatred, and would only add new hatred. Ding Runfeng heard Mu Xian's words and sighed secretly. If he could not beat her now, he was afraid that there would be no hope in the future. This was his personal experience and the reason for his despair and loss. Compared to Shan Xiang's anger and Ding Runfeng's disappointment, Mu Xian's expression was always calm. It was as if the person in front of her was not a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. But most of Yu Hongyan's attention fell on this alienated and indifferent woman. Even if there were other disciples of Taishu Temple, such as Ding Runfeng who had a pure young body and Shan Xiang who was at the middle stage of Yuanying like Yu Hongyan's eyes were always fixed on Mu Xian in front of him. Behind her, while Li Yuanfeng's Yin spirit doppelganger was guarding the formation, more than half of its attention fell on Mu Xian. Mu Xian walked towards Yu Hongyan step by step. As she walked, she said softly, "Treasure, please show yourself." Above her head, A bright light shone. Black, white, yellow, green, red, and blue lights flashed together. In the six-colored light, a small sword only 1 foot long appeared. Yu Hongyan gently raised his red eyebrows and said, "Oh, is that the hexagonal sword?" The small sword that appeared above Mu Xian's head was a magic weapon. It was the hexagonal sword, the magic weapon that Peng Jie used to protect himself in the late stage of Yuanying. In the past, during the first opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong, Peng Jie also came with this magic weapon, but he was trapped by the yin and yang life and death formation, and could not escape. Later, when Peng Jie returned to White Cloud Mountain, the hexagonal sword also went back with him. When Peng Jie came out again, he was directly suppressed by the Taishu demon suppressing steel. The hexagonal sword was brought back to the Taishu temple by the Xianlin Taoist. This time, when the reserve of Taishu temple entered the desolate ancient sea of stars, the elders of the temple gave this magic weapon to Mu Xian. During the first opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong, Yu Hongyan was also present, so he naturally recognized the hexagonal sword. "My teacher Peng Jie." Mu Xian opened her mouth slightly and said these 4 words in a calm tone. Yu Hongyan's expression did not change at all. He only nodded. The army destroyer imperial halberd in his hand vibrated slightly, and the evil power of the destruction of heaven and earth became stronger. It faced the 6-colored light around the hexagonal sword from a distance, neither giving way to the other. An old voice came from the hexagonal sword. "What a great weapon!" Mu Xian said softly, "Thank you, Senior Hexagon." The hexagonal sword said, "This goddess's magic power is extraordinary. Be careful not to let her get close to you, or else it will be very difficult for you to deal with her." After saying that, the sword body let out a soft hum, and its overall shape began to change. Its body was covered in 6-colored light, and the other 5 colors gradually converged, leaving only green. And from the center of the green light, accompanied by a mighty dragon's roar, a giant ship that was thousands of feet long and had 3 floors rushed out. It crushed the void with the momentum of breaking through the waves, and was unstoppable. It was one of the hexagonal sword's forms, the flying dragon ship. Mu Xian landed on the flying dragon ship, and the huge ship soared into the sky, but it seemed to be very agile. It passed through layers of void, and its position was hard to determine. It broke through layers of obstacles, as if nothing could stop it, and it could move freely. On the flying dragon ship, Mu Xian did not advance but retreated. She separated the layers of space, and tried to put as much distance between her and Yu Hongyan as possible. She opened her palm, and light gathered on top of her palm, gradually condensing into a ball of light. In the ball of light, 9 orifices could be vaguely seen, and from each orifices came a loud and clear song. It was as if there was a god living in each orifice. 9 orifices, 9 gods awakened at the same time, shaking the world. Rays of light shot out from the 9 orifices, and in each ray of light, there were mysterious talismans flashing. Endless light poured down like a storm of meteors, and it hit Yu Hongyan's head. Mu Xian stood on the flying dragon ship, shuttling between the void. The rays of light that were activated by the Supreme 9 Aperture's real god's Baoqi formula were like divine punishment falling from the sky, and instantly covered the entire peak of White Cloud Mountain. Yu Hongyan's expression was calm, and he gently waved the army-breaching imperial halberd in his hand, and swept away the rays of light. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. In that moment, the orifices all over Yu Hongyan's body opened and closed, and his whole body seemed to be emitting light, like twinkling stars. Following Yu Hongyan's movements, the stars seemed to come to life, and their positions were erratic. During this period, there was a kind of change in the universe, and the mysterious principles of the stars' displacement, as well as a majestic power. The power of the stars was so great, and the movement of the stars was such a spectacular thing. At this moment, the orifices all over Yu Hongyan's body were naturally not as good as the real stars, but the movement of the qi and blood in his body had comprehended the principles of the stars' displacement, and an amazing power burst out. She suddenly took 3 steps. When she took the first step, there seemed to be countless doppelgangers, which were as elusive as the stars in the universe. When she took the second step, the numerous doppelgangers instantly shrank to 28. Although she was holding the army-breaching imperial halberd, the martial art of Astro Sovereign, and the martial art conception of the 28 constellations Star Divine Fist were clearly integrated into the spear. When she took the third step, all the doppelgangers merged into one, and the figure of Yu Hongyan was revealed. But he was not in the same place anymore, but directly on the flying dragon ship, and face-to-face with Mu Xian, and they were very close. Astro Sovereign's martial art killing move, Star-Changing Constellation. Since Zhu Yi's doppelganger of Hao Yang had obtained this powerful martial art, Xianmen Tianzong, and the others had successfully integrated it into their own martial art system. Although the star-changing constellation of Yu Hongyan was not as pure as Zhu Yi's doppelganger of Hao Yang, it was also a new style, and it was more fierce and violent. Her body swayed, from the soles of her feet to her legs, and then to her waist, along the spine all the way up to the top of her head. Her whole body swayed fiercely, and the power of the army-breaching imperial halberd in her hand became even fiercer. As she swayed, it seemed like she was going to swing the stars down. Seeing this, Mu Xian's pupils slightly contracted. The flying dragon ship under her feet also shook a little, and an old voice came out, "Change." As the light flickered, the shape of the ship changed, and the green light turned into a faint blue light. Under the blue light, the huge ship that was hundreds of feet long shrank rapidly, and finally turned into a blue shield. At the critical moment, it blocked between Mu Xian and Yu Hongyan. The hexagonal sword changed shape again, and it was the motionless void shield. The moment the motionless void shield appeared, Yu Hongyan attacked with the army-breaching imperial halberd in his hand. The star-changing constellation of Constellation was combined with the power of the mighty thunderbolt divine spear, and it was extremely ferocious. Mu Xian took a deep breath, and the light on top of her head lit up, and a shadow that was almost hundreds of feet tall suddenly appeared. The face of the shadow was blank, and there were no facial features at all. It was wearing a Taoist robe that was embroidered with the sun, moon, and stars, as well as mountains and seas, and it was stepping on a large white cloud. Its whole body exuded an incomparably majestic aura, as if it was the truth of this world, setting the rules and order, and representing the vast Tao of heaven and earth. It was the law of heaven and earth that Mu Xian had obtained from cultivating the supreme Wangqing Tao. At the same time, Yu Hongyan's army-breaching imperial halberd had already hit the motionless void shield that the hexagonal sword had transformed into. That fierce and violent power made the motionless void shield tremble, and the condensed blue light was constantly shattered. The tip of the green and black halberd touched the surface of the motionless void shield like a hot knife through butter, and a loud "Kacha" sound was instantly heard. The center of the surface of the motionless void shield had already faintly cracked, and it had a tendency to expand continuously. Its magic treasure primordial spirit let out a muffled groan, and it was full of pain. When Mu Xian saw this, her usually indifferent eyes also had a few ripples. After Yu Hongyan got close to her, the attack that was aimed at her was too fierce. If it wasn't for the hexagonal sword that blocked it for her, she would have been seriously injured even if she didn't die. The concept of the motionless void shield was already very high. Even if the outside world collapsed and the earth cracked, I will always live in the motionless void, unbreakable and indestructible. But Yu Hongyan's attack combined with the army-breaching imperial halberd was too powerful, and it actually exceeded the limit of the motionless void shield. Both magic treasures were in the hands of Yuanying stage cultivators, and neither could exert their full power. Normally, when they fought normally, they would not use the motionless void shield and focus on defense. Even if they were not a match for the army-breaching imperial halberd, their defense would not be broken in one round. This result could only mean one thing. The user of the army-breaching imperial halberd was stronger. After Mu Xian's eyes flashed, she quickly regained her calmness. She and her law of heaven and earth moved their hands together, and then they crossed through space and pressed behind the motionless void shield. Then, together with the magic treasure and the huge law of heaven and earth, they turned into nothingness. Although the supernatural power of infinite transformation was not a true defensive spell, when used at the right time, the effect was better than other defensive methods. In the past, Yu Hongyan's cultivation was still low. When she participated in the Desolate Sea Assembly when she was in the foundation building stage, she once used the characteristic of the infinite transformation of cultivators below the primordial spirit stage to defeat her opponent. But this time, her spear had already touched the motionless void shield, and the power had completely exploded. At this time, Mu Xian used the infinite transformation of infinite transformation again, and this time, she fought for a chance of survival for herself and the hexagonal sword. However, Yu Hongyan's reaction was fast, and her martial path supernatural power was even more flexible. After the army breaching Imperial halberd mist, she immediately changed the direction of the spear, and the second spear stabbed towards Mu Xian, who had returned to reality. But at this time Mu Xian suddenly put her palms together, and her physical body's eyes became dull. A faintly discernible light shadow came out from the top of her head, and it was her soul that left her body. At the same time, the motionless void shield that was flashing with blue light forcefully suppressed its own injuries, and changed its appearance again. At the same time, the treasure light around it changed from blue to black. Chapter 10-12. The hexagonal sword, as its name suggested, could actually transform into 6 forms and display 6 functions. It was quite outstanding among the spirit-nurturing grade magic treasures. However, if this treasure wanted to advance to the transformation grade, it would require much more effort than other magic treasures to refine. The hexagonal sword itself glowed with 6 colors, namely black, white, yellow, green, red and blue, which corresponded to its 6 transformations. The dragon flying ship that flashed with green light, traversing through the void. The immovable void shield that flashed with blue light had amazing defensive power and could defend against powerful attacks from external enemies. The righteous sword that flashed with white light split the heavens and split the earth and destroyed thousands of demons. It symbolized the supreme righteousness and ruled over the heavens. The Dian furnace that flashed with red light could be used to refine elixirs and medicines, and could also be used to store enemies in it for refinement. The fairy binding curse lock, a magic treasure that flashed with yellow light, could lock enemies and restrict their powers. The 6th form was a dark and gloomy spike that flashed with black light. It floated in the air, as if it was in between reality and illusion, faintly discernible. It was almost impossible to detect with the naked eye, and it was difficult to determine its position as it drifted. This was the 6th form of the hexagonal sword, Staphylococcus vulgar. There was another magical power with the same name, which came from the ancient book of the Taishu Temple on the soul, Spiritual Wander to the Taishu Temple. It was a top-killer move in the path of cultivating the soul. At this moment, Mu Xian's physical body's gaze became dull, and her eyeballs did not even move, as if she was a clay puppet. Above her head, however, there was a faintly discernible ball of light. It was almost undetectable. Impressively, it was the astral projection. Li Yuanfeng's in-spirit doppelganger sat cross-legged in the center of the array at the top of the mountain. His expression did not change, but there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. He did not expect that Mu Xian would dare to have her soul leave her body in front of Yu Hongyan. Soul techniques were strange and unpredictable, and had many transformations. This was a fact, but it was widely recognized to have 2 greatest nemesis. One was the powerful thunder technique, and the other was the majestic energy and blood of martial adepts of the same realm. When one was full of vigor, even ghosts and gods would find it difficult to approach. Although this statement was a little too absolute, it could explain some problems to a large extent. Yu Hongyan, on the other hand, was a cultivator who specialized in martial arts. Even though she was injured at the moment and could not reach the peak of her strength, her majestic qi and blood were extremely blazing. Ordinary demons and monsters would immediately turn into ashes the moment they got close to her. Mu Xian still dared to project her soul out of her body when she couldn't even win against Yu Hongyan. She was practically courting death. Of course, she was not really tired of living. The reason why Mu Xian dared to do this was because she had the hexagonal sword with her. In the blink of an eye, the battle between Yu Hongyan and Mu Xian had already begun. Their lives were hanging by a thread, and it was too much for the spectators to take in. It was at this moment that the other cultivators from Taishu Temple started attacking the hole projected by the formation at the top of the mountain. When they saw Mu Xian's movements, they almost shouted in unison, "Sister Mu won." The plan worked. The previous attack was the most dangerous and the most crucial. That attack didn't do anything to Sister Mu, so the situation is now under Sister Mu's control. Li Yuanfang activated the formation to block them. When he heard that, he frowned slightly and looked up at the fierce battle between Yu Hongyan and Mu Xian in the void. When Yu Hongyan saw Mu Xian's appearance, she immediately knew that her soul had left her body. She did not believe that Mu Xian, who was the direct disciple of Taishu Temple, would not know the weakness of the art of soul. Since she still dared to make a move, it meant that she had something to rely on. The qi and blood in Yu Hongyan's body surged, and there seemed to be flames in her eyes. Her vision almost solidified, turning into a blood-red pillar of light that swept across the void, taking in everything in her eyes. She saw that Mu Xian's soul had entered the flashing black light of Staphylococcus vulgar. The black light around Staphylococcus vulgar suddenly became more intense. At this time, Mu Xian's heaven and earth form retracted her physical body. She reached out a hand to grab Staphylococcus vulgar, and then stabbed towards Yu Hongyan. The black light flashed and disappeared without a trace. Under normal circumstances, it was difficult to see with the naked eye. But at this moment, Yu Hongyan's eyes were shining, and he could vaguely see that fierce Staphylococcus vulgar was stabbing towards him. Whether it was the art of Staphylococcus vulgar recorded in Taishu Temple, or the art of Staphylococcus vulgar transformed from the Dharma treasure hexagonal sword, their purpose was to assassinate the enemy's soul. After merging with the Dharma treasure Staphylococcus vulgar, Mu Xian's soul was protected by the Dharma treasure, and she was no longer afraid of Yu Hongyan's masculine qi and blood. It was like a person sitting in a boat, no longer afraid of the waves outside. And Mu Xian used the art of Staphylococcus vulgar to propel the Dharma treasure. The power of the two sides combined was even more astonishing. At this time, the person in danger became Yu Hongyan. When a martial artist's powerful qi and blood could not restrain the art of soul, it would be very dangerous for a martial artist to face art of soul. If a martial artist had physical strength, but did not have a strong enough spiritual will, they were destined to be unable to achieve great things. Yu Hongyan's soul was not weak, but this strength was not reflected in the power of the soul. When she faced the enemy's art of soul, it was difficult for her to effectively defend herself. Usually, martial arts adepts could restrain art of soul, but when this restraint no longer existed, the situation between the two sides was suddenly reversed. It was difficult for martial arts adepts to guard against the attack of art of soul. Seeing this, Yu Hongyan's pair of red eyebrows rose slightly. At this moment, if she had the 7 kills star armor on her, she would not be afraid of the opponent's art of soul. The 7 kills star armor was both offensive and defensive. Whether it was offensive or defensive power, it was not only directed against tangible objects. As long as she could slightly obstruct Mu Xian's attack, she was confident that she could first destroy her opponent's Dharma power. However, whether it was the 7 kills star armor or the army vanquisher halberd, they were both extremely fierce and tyrannical Dharma treasures. They would unknowingly affect the mind of the user, causing them to be filled with thoughts of killing and destruction, and become manic. Usually, Yu Hongyan could use 2 Dharma treasures at the same time and still calm her mind. But now, her condition was not good, and she could at most use 1 Dharma treasure at the same time. With Yu Hongyan's personality, she naturally would not choose the 7 kills star armor, which was more inclined towards defense. Instead, she chose to use the army vanquisher halberd, which was a pure offensive weapon. In fact, at this moment, it was still not too late for her to withdraw the halberd and change her Dharma armor. But Yu Hongyan did not do so. Instead, she let out a clear whistle, and a red mass of air that seemed like wind and fog emerged around her body, flashing with a terrifying red light. It was the Avicii Aura Fiend of the 4 great divine winds. The Avicii Aura Fiend could detain the opponent's spirit. From a certain point of view, it also had an obvious restraining effect on spirit techniques. Moreover, it was different from the masculine qi and blood of the physical body. The Avicii Aura Fiend itself was in between existence and non-existence, and did not have an absolute form. Mu Xian's attack did not slow down at all. She was aware that Xianmen Tianzong and Yu Hongyan possessed the Avicii Aura Fiend, but she firmly believed in the power of her magic and the Dharma treasure Staphylococcus vulgar as one. Although the Avicii Aura Fiend was ferocious, Staphylococcus vulgar's attack was concentrated on one point, incomparably condensed and pure. Before she was injured by the Avicii Aura Fiend, Mu Xian was confident that she would be able to pierce through Yu Hongyan's spirit first, and severely injure him. Yu Hongyan's expression was as usual, and his figure suddenly disappeared within the flashing red light of the Avicii Aura Fiend. At first, Mu Xian did not feel anything, but very quickly, her expression changed greatly. This was because in her perception, Yu Hongyan seemed to have merged with the Avicii Aura Fiend as one, and there was no distinction between them. Under such circumstances, her Staphylococcus vulgar was actually unable to lock onto a target, and target Yu Hongyan's spirit to assassinate it. The Avicii Aura Fiend detains the spirit, and also destroys the human body. How can she hide? Mu Xian's usually calm gaze was now filled with astonishment. Not to mention that she is a martial adept, and her body has been tempered hundreds and thousands of times. How can she hide within the Avicii Aura Fiend? Calm down. This should also be one of her remarkable techniques. An old voice came from within Staphylococcus vulgar, and then layers of black light rolled continuously, intertwining with the Avicii Aura Fiend that was emitting red light. In the next moment, the rolling red light mist dispersed, revealing Yu Hongyan's figure, who was dragging the army destroyer Imperial Halberd. The red-haired girl's expression was as calm as ever. Staphylococcus vulgar snorted. I didn't expect you to not only specialize in martial arts, but also have such exquisite skills and other remarkable techniques. Yu Hongyan's red lips parted slightly, and she said indifferently, this technique is called the Avicii walk, and it is also a martial art. Mu Xian and Staphylococcus vulgar were slightly stunned. They saw that Yu Hongyan's entire body was currently flashing with rolling red light, and her entire body seemed to be made out of the Avicii Aura Fiend. Her body was one with the Avicii Aura Fiend that was like fog and wind, and as if she was stepping on the waves, she pressed towards Mu Xian and Staphylococcus vulgar. The originally greenish-black army destroyer Imperial Halberd in her hand was now flashing with red light, and it was also attached to the Avicii Aura Fiend. As she waved it, ghosts and gods howled, and it was mournful and strange. At this moment, the army destroyer Imperial Halberd accurately intercepted Mu Xian's Staphylococcus vulgar. Both sides collided in the void, and the already injured Staphylococcus vulgar paused for a moment, and it once again let out a muffled groan. Mu Xian's Dharma power of heaven and earth activated Staphylococcus vulgar, but it was met with the strong resistance of the Avicii Aura Fiend, and it could not really hurt Yu Hongyan's spirit. Even though Mu Xian had always been calm, she could not help but feel a sense of disappointment at this moment. She only felt as if she was facing an opponent that she could not defeat no matter how hard she tried. As Yu Hongyan waved her halberd, Mu Xian was immediately forced to retreat. The rolling red fog of light shrouded the top of White Cloud Mountain, and gradually submerged Mu Xian's Dharma power of heaven and earth. Being attacked by the Avicii Aura Fiend, Mu Xian's Dharma power of heaven and earth suddenly showed spots of broken light. It looked like the outer appearance of a clay statue, under the erosion of wind and rain, gradually decaying and mottled, and the skin was falling off. Yu Hongyan's offensive became more and more intense, and the more he attacked, the more smoothly it became. With a wave of the army destroyer Imperial Halberd, Staphylococcus vulgar was shaken away, and the halberd swept horizontally, and the tail of the halberd slammed into the waist of Mu Xian's Dharma power of heaven and earth. Mu Xian once again used the infinite transformation technique, but the Avicii Aura Fiend around Yu Hongyan's body suddenly rose, and completely sealed off the surrounding space. When Mu Xian's Dharma power of heaven and earth reappeared in the real world, Yu Hongyan's second strike had already arrived. The army destroyer Imperial Halberd turned its head and tail, and with one strike, it directly broke Mu Xian's Dharma power of heaven and earth at the waist. The Dharma power of heaven and earth that was gradually disintegrating gradually changed into the appearance of Mu Xian. She watched as her Dharma power of heaven and earth was destroyed by Yu Hongyan, and her eyes were fixed on Yu Hongyan, not saying a word. Meanwhile, The Staphylococcus vulgar in her hand suddenly burst out with a black light, and with the last of its strength, it stabbed towards Yu Hongyan. Yu Hongyan raised his eyebrows, and the halberd in his hand changed direction again. And as it turned, he used the tail of the halberd to block Staphylococcus vulgar. Then he let go of the army destroyer imperial halberd with one hand, and clenched his hand into a fist, wrapped in the surging Avicii aura fiend, and smashed heavily on Staphylococcus vulgar. Chapter 10:13. Yu Hongyan's white jade-like fist was glowing with red light at this moment as it heavily smashed onto Staphylococcus vulgar. The seemingly illusory Staphylococcus vulgar, at this moment, was hit by Yu Hongyan's fist, but it seemed to have a real body at this moment. When the two sides collided, a muffled bang was heard. The shining black light around Staphylococcus vulgar was previously destroyed by the army vanquisher halberd. At this moment, before it had time to recover, it was punched by Yu Hongyan again. As a magic treasure, Staphylococcus vulgar could barely withstand it, but the spirit that Mu Xian had placed in it was directly shaken out by this huge force. Once out of the protection of the magic treasure, Staphylococcus vulgar, although Mu Xian was proficient in spirit techniques, and her spirit was tough and strong, it was still extremely difficult to face the boundless evil qi. Especially when her heaven and earth form was destroyed, and her strength was greatly reduced, it was even more so. Her spirit returned to her body, and after the soul and spirit merged together, a dark red blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, and she fell back. Yu Hongyan retracted his fist, and with a wave of the army vanquisher halberd, Staphylococcus vulgar was also knocked away. The black light around Staphylococcus vulgar had dimmed a lot. As the light flickered, the 5 colors of white, red, blue, green, and yellow reappeared, and its appearance changed back to the hexagonal sword. The hexagonal sword guarded beside Mu Xian. Mu Xian's eyes were scattered, and there was no focus in her sight. Blood flowed out of her facial orifices, and she looked quite miserable. When the spirit left the body to cast a secret technique, it was strange and unpredictable, but if it was attacked, without the protection of the body's primordial qi, the spirit would be directly injured. Mu Xian's dharma form of heaven and earth was also destroyed by Yu Hongyan. All the essence of her power was temporarily dispersed, and she couldn't even stabilize her divine soul. Shan Xiang, Ding Runfeng, and the rest of the Taishu temple cultivators stared in shock at the scene unfolding before their eyes. They did not expect the situation to take such a drastic turn for the worse. Mu Xian, who was supposed to win, was defeated so badly. Mu Xian did not plan to use the art of the soul on the spot. Instead, among the cultivators of the Taishu temple who were below the primordial divinity realm, her talent in the art of the soul was one of the few. The art of the soul was her forte, especially the Staphylococcus vulgar. Under a surprise attack, the primordial divinity cultivators from other forces had to be careful. Although soul adepts were restrained by the masculine blood of martial adepts, Mu Xian possessed the magic weapon Staphylococcus vulgar formed from the hexagonal sword, so she was no longer afraid of the hot blood of martial adepts below the primordial divinity stage. Even though Yu Hongyan had the Avicii aura, Mu Xian had actually considered this. But after many years of cultivation, and under the guidance of his master, Lin Feng, Yu Hongyan's understanding of his own remarkable martial arts and the Avicii aura had reached a whole new level. Yu Hongyan's strength was not what it used to be, and this was within Mu Xian's consideration. But in what aspect, and to what extent, this was not something she could predict. She could only observe and experience it in the process of actual combat. But the price she had to pay was very likely to be beyond redemption. At this moment, Mu Xian was in such a state. Her spirit was seriously injured, and she felt as if there were billions of steel needles stabbing into her brain, making her feel so much pain that she wished she was dead. She could not concentrate at all, and she saw stars in front of her eyes. Her vision darkened, and she completely lost the ability to continue fighting. The destruction of the Dharma power had greatly reduced her strength. If she wanted to cultivate the Dharma power again, it would take a long time. She was still young, and compared to the 3,600 years of life of a Yuanying stage adept, time was not a problem. But what made Mu Xian's heart slightly cold was that she felt her own state of mind begin to fluctuate. She cultivated the way of supreme Wangqing, cut off all means of retreat, and pushed the thread of love she had for Pangjie to the extreme. If she could not achieve the path, she would instead go downhill. But she had lost at the hands of Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, at the hands of the middle Yuanying stage Yu Hongyan. This serious setback was affecting her state of mind. Not to mention that the knot in her heart could not be untied. It was getting heavier and heavier. Mu Xian had cultivated the way of supreme Wangqing for many years, and could already feel that the situation was developing in a worse direction. Yu Hongyan glanced at Mu Xian and the hexagonal sword indifferently. He carried the army destroyer Imperial Halberd on his back, and he had already landed on the peak of Baiyin Mountain again. He stared calmly and coldly at the other adepts of Taishu Temple. Shan Xiang, Ding Runfeng and the rest immediately stopped, and their hearts sank to the bottom. Mu Xian and Yu Hongyan's fight had actually only taken a moment, but the outcome was already decided. Not only was Mu Xian's Dharma power destroyed, and her spirit was severely injured, the hexagonal sword was also damaged when it transformed into the immovable void shield and Staphylococcus vulgar. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible for them to break through the obstruction of Yu Hongyan and Li Yuanfeng's doppelgangers. Shan Xiang stared at Yu Hongyan, and Ding Runfeng, who was next to him, reached out and pressed his shoulder. Shan Xiang turned his head, and Ding Runfeng looked at him and slowly shook his head. Remember Sister Mu's words, Brother Shan, I have to say something offensive. You won't be able to help if you go up now. Shan Xiang closed his eyes in pain and could not speak. Ding Runfeng looked at Yu Hongyan and thought of Bai Shiqian in the past. He felt bitter in his heart and sighed. I can only depend on junior brother Chun and junior brother Gua. Chun Xingyu, who had high hopes on him, looked calm, but he was not in a good mood. The reason was because of the young man in front of him, who also looked calm. This young man looked very ordinary, not as strong as Tang Jun, not as arrogant as Han Yang, not as cold as Zhou Yunsong. His facial features could only be considered regular, and could not be said to be handsome. But when people saw him they would feel at ease, as if he would never disappoint them. He was terrifyingly stable, and dazzlingly determined. It was Xianmen Tianzong, the second-generation first-seat disciple of the Qiantian Palace, Yang Tai. He spread his hands out horizontally, and the heavy and condensed earthy yellow light flashed silently on his left hand, while a blue stream of water floated on his right hand. The stream of water was not light and agile, but was as heavy as the light on his left hand. The icy blue fog around Chun Xingyu floated, and within it, a pale white light shone faintly. The cold and lonely absolute infernal energy floated in the void inside the mountain. Yang Tai nodded slightly. Absolute body. Friend Chen's absolute infernal energy is indeed extraordinary. Behind Yang Tai stood Zhou Yunsong, Lu Xiaofeng and Li Xingfei. Zhou Yunsong's gaze was fixed on Chun Xingyu, and black smoke had already appeared around his body. Senior brother Zhou, you continue down with senior brother Lu and senior sister Li. I will handle this. At this time, Yang Tai transmitted his voice to Zhou Yunsong. Master, senior uncle and the others have said that unless you kill him on the spot, you should not fight with Chun Xingyu in the near future. Zhou Yunsong's eyes were gloomy. He did not forget what Yang Tai said, but he felt very depressed. Lu Xiaofeng walked in front of him and said softly, there will be a chance. Calm down, restrain yourself, and think about the Taoist name that fifth senior uncle gave you. Zhou Yunsong took a deep breath, turned around and walked away. He did not want to stay there for even a moment. He was cold and ruthless, but he was not really a bloodthirsty person. It was more because of the influence of his burning sun body. Facing Chun Xingyu, he had an innate hostility and longed to fight with him. However, there was no death feud between them. If Chun Xingyu did not take the initiative to attack him, no matter how anxious he was, he would not take the initiative to provoke him. Seeing that Zhou Yunsong was finally listening to their advice, Lu Xiaofeng and Li Xingfei were relieved. They looked at Yang Tai. Brother Yang, be careful. Yang Tai nodded. Don't worry, I am here. Hearing him say so, Lu Xiaofeng and Li Xingfei did not say anything else, and followed behind Zhou Yunsong into the depths of the mountain. When the absolute infernal energy was unleashed, the gentleness in Chen Xingyu's eyes disappeared. His face was expressionless and cold. His tone was calm and indifferent, as if it did not contain any emotion. It is impossible for my temple to back down in the battle of Ding of Shenzhou. Fellow Taoist Yang, please excuse me. After he finished speaking, the ice-blue absolute infernal energy swept toward Yang Tai. Friend Chen, you are too polite. Yang Tai spread out his hands, and the light on his palms suddenly changed. The earth element divine light in the center of his left hand became brighter and brighter from its original earthy yellow color. Finally, it became a pure and flawless light. As for the primordial chaos true water on his right hand, its color became darker and darker, and finally, it became a silent and deep darkness. At this time, Yang Tai put his palms together and chanted in a low voice, "Infinite light, infinite darkness, the beginning of the two poles, the creation of the heavens." The black and white light instantly turned into a huge magic altar that looked like a datura flower. Yet was not a datura flower. Countless bright and dazzling light rays intertwined with countless dark and deep black lines, forming lines that looked like the orbit of the stars in the sky. Together, they weaved an independent small world. Even though Chen Xingyu's state of mind was indifferent due to the influence of the absolute infernal energy, when he saw this scene, his eyes flickered slightly. In the current divine land, anyone with knowledge would be able to recognize this magic art. This was the self-created magic art of Zhu Yi, the master of the Qiantian Palace, the second personal disciple of Lin Feng, the light and dark mandala great barrier of heavens. Just like how Zhou Yunsong's blazing yang energy shattering qi, blazing yang exterminating Tao, could incinerate the opponent's yang qi and damage their divine arts and magic power, even injuring the opponent's own yang qi. Chen Xingyu's absolute infernal fiend could similarly annihilate the opponent's yin qi. Facing such an opponent, Yang Tai did not intend to be conservative in defense. Although he seemed to be passive in fights, and always attacked after the opponent attacked, it was not that he did not know the principle of adapting to the situation and making the best use of it. At this moment, he directly unfolded the light and dark mandala great barrier of heavens, sealing Chen Xingyu's absolute infernal energy. Without waiting for his opponent to make any other changes, the altar-like barrier directly collapsed toward the center, imitating the powerful force of the world's destruction. Chen Xingyu's expression was indifferent. As his hands changed the seals, the absolute infernal energy began to twist and turn with a center as the base. After he turned the infinite void of yin and yang into the absolute yin world, Chen Xingyu once again combined the talent of his absolute yin body with the great Tao magic of Taishu, turning the yin-yang crushing heaven and earth grinding mill into the absolute yin crushing heaven and earth grinding mill. He faced Yang Tai's light and dark mandala great barrier of heavens. The proud heirs of the two major forces of the divine land were engaged in a great battle in the belly of the white cloud mountain in the little Kelowna world. Although Chen Xingyu's expression did not change at all, and he did not relax his hands, in fact, deep in his heart, he knew that he had already lost. Although the winner between him and Yang Tai had not been decided, his own Taishu Temple and Xianmen Tianzong were already at a disadvantage in the competition. They did not have the gate of the Sea of Stars, and the number of cultivators who could enter the Sea of Stars was limited. This was a fact, but this could not conceal another fact, and that was the difference between the level of the younger disciples of both sides. It seemed inconspicuous and weak, but at this moment, the foundation of the number one holy land in the divine prefecture was faintly shaking. Chapter 10:14. Although Chen Xingyu's attention was focused on the fight with Yang Tai, he had already noticed some things before this. Mu Xian and the rest of the Taishu Temple disciples were unable to follow them into the belly of the mountain, but the people from Xianmen Tianzong came in. The result outside was obvious. Yang Tai in front of him, Zhou Yunsong and the others who had just left, were only second-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. Moreover, they were only in the golden elixir period. However, apart from them, Chen Xingyu had clearly seen Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qinggu, the three direct disciples of Lin Feng, the master of the celestial sect, had also arrived at the foot of the White Cloud Mountain. Thinking of this, Chen Xingyu, who had always been calm and composed and handled matters with ease, also felt a faint sense of despair in his heart. This feeling of despair did not come from Yang Tai in front of him, but from the overall situation at hand. Regarding Guo Chaoyang, Chen Xingyu understood him very well. Although the two of them had different standpoints, Chen Xingyu had never doubted Guo Chaoyang's ability and strength. As the representative figures of the conservative and radical factions within the Taishu Temple in this generation of disciples, the two of them had fought many times and understood each other very well. Chen Xingyu was the disciple of Lin Daohan, the most outstanding disciple of the previous generation of Taishu Temple. He was born with an absolute yin body. Although there were many dangers in the process of cultivation, his talent and cultivation strength were the most outstanding talents of this generation of Taishu Temple disciples. However, Guo Chaoyang was able to stand up to him as an equal. The competition between the two of them was balanced, unlike Lin Daohan of the previous generation, who outshone others. But in the current situation, no matter how capable Guo Chaoyang was, it would be useless unless he could leap from the early Yuanying stage to the primordial divinity stage in the blink of an eye. If he wanted to maintain some suspense, he would have to reach the late Yuanying stage at the very least. Unfortunately, if Guo Chaoyang was truly capable, Chen Xingyu would have admitted defeat long ago. Therefore, Chen Xingyu could hardly be optimistic about the current situation in Little Kelowna world. He looked at Yang Tai again and sighed inwardly. Fighting with Yang Tai right now was meaningless to him. His value was limited. If Zhou Yunsong had stayed behind to fight with him, Chen Xingyu would have been able to gain some additional benefits. Has he realized it? No wonder. Even if he doesn't realize it himself, he has seniors from the same sect. In that case, Xianmen Tianzong probably knows a lot about my situation. Chen Xingyu thought, but if I don't provoke him first, given Xianmen Tianzong's way of doing things, he probably won't kidnap me like how Golden Cicada kidnapped Zhou Yunsong. The premise is what happened back then. Chen Xingyu took a deep breath. His slightly fluctuating emotions instantly returned to a state of stillness and emptiness, as calm as ever. Zhou Yunsong longed for a fight with him. In fact, he had the same thought in his heart. Although it was a pity, he still braced himself and fought fiercely with Yang Tai in front of him. Although the situation was unfavorable for his side and their hopes were slim, Chen Xingyu could not simply muddle along, slack off here, and slowly fool around with Yang Tai. He went all out, even more serious than before, and attacked Yang Tai. If he could defeat him, his side's originally slim hope would increase a little. But at this moment, White Cloud Mountain suddenly shook violently. Chen Xingyu could clearly feel that the flow of spiritual qi in the surrounding environment seemed to have changed. As he carefully sensed the changes, Yang Tai's eyes revealed joy, while Chen Xingyu sighed inwardly. Outside White Cloud Mountain, in the sky of Little Kelowna world, Kai Fengzhou's expression also changed slightly. He controlled the magic cloud pillar to fly up, blocking Shi Tianhao's stone sword. He flicked his fingers lightly, condensing his dermic power into wisps of qi that merged into the huge white qi pillar that originated from White Cloud Mountain. Even so, the white qi pillar was gradually shaking, showing signs of exhaustion. This was not a problem with Kai Fengzhou's dermic powers, but a change in the flow of White Cloud Mountain's spiritual qi. Although compared to the entire Little Kelowna world and White Cloud Mountain, the changes were not great. Kai Fengzhou's previous methods were completely based on the spiritual qi pulsation in Little Kelowna world, and the ancient divine land of the past. Even the slightest change would have an infinitely magnified effect. The slightest error could lead to a huge error. Fortunately, Kai Fengzhou's dermic powers were profound, and his dermic powers were extensive. As the flow of White Cloud Mountain's spiritual qi changed, he kept on making slight adjustments. Otherwise, the white qi pillar might have been instantly destroyed. Kai Fengzhou frowned slightly. He looked at Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger in front of him, and shook his head slightly. He put his palms together and pinched a spell. In the void around him, boundless clouds surged. Amidst the white clouds, a huge city flashing with golden light rose from the ground and took shape in an instant. The city walls on all four sides formed a huge city, and an immovable, immortal, and eternal power emerged from it. 9 Heavens of Taishu Technique, 6 Heavens of Taishu, Outline Heaven Celestial City. 2 dermic powers, one black and one white, intertwined around Kai Fengzhou, turning into a huge whirlpool that kept spinning. It was the manifestation of his yin-yang cycle Dao fruit. The yin-yang cycle Dao fruit integrated into Outline Heaven's celestial city. Instantly, the seemingly indestructible huge city distorted in the void and lost its original shape. However, the immortal and indestructible power concept became even more intense. There was also an intertwining of yin and yang, and the power was endless and eternal. Outline Heaven's celestial city, which was originally a powerful defensive technique, suddenly moved forward and crushed towards Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi's Haoyang doppelganger. The city and the surrounding void that kept spinning and twisting locked Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi within, as though they were going to be sucked into the whirlpool. Shi Tianhao held the stone sword in his hand, and a dazzling light shone on the sword's edge. The smile on his face was gone, but he didn't seem solemn. He was extremely calm and composed. With the sword's edge, Shi Tianhao slashed towards Outline Heaven's celestial city, which was facing the morning sun. However, as soon as the sword was unleashed, the flow of spiritual qi in the little Kelowna world that Ding of Shenzhou had created seemed to tremble. It wasn't because of how powerful the sword was, or how vigorous the power was. Instead, it was because the sword intent of Shi Tianhao's sword contained an extremely terrifying power concept. It was as though everything was heading towards extinction and the end. As the stone sword slashed out, it seemed to trigger a few strange air currents that attacked Outline Heaven's celestial city together. Seeing this, Kai Fengzhou's pupils constricted slightly. Malevolent aura. This is the sword Dao of that mystic gate master, but it's not completely the same. The minute yet fierce air currents triggered by Shi Tianhao's sword intent were the malevolent aura of heaven and earth. Malevolent aura was also a part of the creation of the great Dao of heaven and earth, but it was also a mortal enemy. All things in the world were born and died at a certain time, and they were constantly changing. When spiritual qi was abundant, all things would grow and multiply, and the creation of an area would head towards prosperity. When malevolent aura was too abundant, all things would die, and the world would head towards its end. As the malevolent aura of heaven and earth was triggered, even the flow of spiritual qi in the little Kelowna world was affected. When Shi Tianhao slashed out with his sword Dao originated from his own comprehension of Dao techniques. He referenced the sword intent of Lin Feng's heaven-punishing sword qi, and integrated the power of his terminus divine light into it. Terminus was the end of all things, the breaking point. Wherever it passed, everything else would be interrupted and end prematurely, forced to draw a full stop. Shi Tianhao's sword seemed to want to cut through everything, drawing a full stop on everything that obstructed it, causing it to reach its end and walk on the path of no return. Wherever the blade of the sword passed, time stopped, sound became silent, light dimmed, and the flowing wind stopped. Everything that was originally active came to an abrupt stop. Regardless of whether they were willing or not, regardless of what their fate was, they reached their end the moment they came into contact with Shi Tianhao's sword, and were annihilated. Even a dazzling and resplendent star would immediately dim and completely collapse after being slashed by Shi Tianhao's sword. Kai Fengzhou's outlined sky immortal city was augmented by the yin-yang cycle Dao fruit, and its power was majestic. It kept twisting and turning as if it wanted to devour the world, and everything in the surroundings was about to be sucked into it. However, at this moment, after being slashed by Shi Tianhao's stone sword, the speed of the twisting and turning void actually began to slow down. Shi Tianhao's expression was heavy as he held his sword horizontally, blocking Kai Fengzhou's outlined sky immortal city. The massive city was extremely huge, and the difference in size between the two sides was completely disproportionate. A resplendent luster flowed endlessly on the stone sword's tip. Traces of viciousness constantly gathered towards Shi Tianhao's sword, resisting the power of outlined sky immortal city together. At this moment, the changes in the spiritual qi flow in White Cloud Mountain below were increasing in magnitude. The frequency was also fast and slow. As White Cloud Mountain was the hub of the spiritual qi flow in the Little Kelowna world, the changes caused by White Cloud Mountain, had even begun to gradually affect the spiritual qi flow in the entire Little Kelowna world. Although the changes were minute, they truly existed. Outside the mountain, Shi Tianhao's sword had triggered the viciousness of heaven and earth. Although it was only a few wisps, it had caused the spiritual qi flow in this world to become increasingly unbalanced. It was easy to destroy, but difficult to build. At this stage, even the Dao integration stage expert of the Taishu Temple, Kai Fengzhou, could not grasp the changes in the spiritual qi flow in time. The massive cloud pillar that rose from White Cloud Mountain was finally unable to continue, and began to gradually collapse. Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone glanced at Kai Fengzhou. In the end, he still did not say a word and descended toward White Cloud Mountain. Kai Fengzhou frowned. The auspicious cloud pillar flew up again, and smashed toward Haoyang's clone. However, he heard Shi Tianhao say indifferently, "Rise." Before he had even finished speaking, 3 balls of light flashed above his head. One of the balls of light transformed into an incomparably massive greenish-black palace. It looked no smaller than Kai Fengzhou's outline Heaven Immortal City. Although it was still a spirit-nurturing stage magic treasure, the energy fluctuations within it were majestic and ferocious. Meanwhile, the second ball of light transformed into a purple crown. Bolts of purple lightning were like raging dragons that shuttled back and forth in the clouds in the sky. The third ball of light dissipated, revealing a small ancient bell. It looked as if it was cast from gold. It had a simple and unadorned design, and its surface was engraved with mysterious patterns that exuded a vigorous power. It was the manifestation stage magic treasure, the Yellow Heaven Bell. The Kuanpeng Palace, the Yellow Heaven Bell, and the Purple Crown of Ascension appeared at the same time. Even though the auspicious cloud pillar was controlled by Kai Fengzhou, it could only stop in its tracks. It could not even fend for itself and could not intercept Zhu Yi. Meanwhile, Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone had already landed on White Cloud Mountain. Chapter 10:15. Seeing Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone land on White Cloud Mountain, Kai Fengzhou could not help but let out a long sigh towards the sky. At this moment, the situation was completely out of Taishu Temple's control. Even though Zhu Yi, who was in Little Kelowna world, was only a clone and not his main body, Kai Fengzhou did not think that Qin Xingyu and the rest could withstand it. The vast young doppelganger directly entered the hole projected by the array formation at the top of the mountain and disappeared. The speed was so fast that Mu Xian, Dan Xiang, Ding Runfeng and the others at the top of the mountain were completely unable to react. However, they were slightly apprehensive. Their instincts told them that something bad was about to happen, and this made them even more anxious. A moment later, White Cloud Mountain suddenly shook violently. The magnitude of the shaking was far greater than before. If it was said that there were only slight tremors before, then the area where White Cloud Mountain was now was like a real earthquake. Kai Fengzhou was the most familiar with the original flow of spiritual qi in Little Kelowna world, so what he felt at this moment was also the most obvious. A faint purple aura started to appear around White Cloud Mountain, and the deafening sound of reading could be vaguely heard. The stone sword in Shi Tianhao's hand, who was facing off against Kai Fengzhou, shone brighter and brighter. The distorted space and outline Heaven Immortal City was gradually becoming still. He smiled. "Sir, do you still want to continue?" Kai Fengzhou's expression did not change, but he was smiling bitterly in his heart. He had not lost yet, and the outcome of his battle with Shi Tianhao had not been decided. However, there was no longer any meaning in continuing the battle. He could almost foresee how things would develop next. Purple aura lingered on White Cloud Mountain, and a pillar of light suddenly soared into the sky, piercing through the heavens above. Then, strips of light kept extending in all directions in the sky, like veins and passageways. On the ground, with White Cloud Mountain as the center, many glowing paths appeared. On these paths of light, one could vaguely see a large amount of air flowing in and out. It's the qi of heaven and earth. Shan Xiang, Ding Runfeng, and the others were from the Taishu Temple, so they naturally had good eyesight. But what made their hearts heavy was that the light patterns formed by the qi of heaven and earth were gradually changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The extent of the change was not necessarily large, but all of this was happening. Shan Xiang and the others naturally did not wish to see such a scene. As the heirs of the Taishu realm, they had some understanding of the situation of their White Cloud Mountain in the Divine Land. They naturally knew that the flow of spiritual qi in the Little Kelowna world was the most beneficial for their Taishu temple. Complex patterns of light lit up between heaven and earth, and the entire Little Kelowna world began to tremble. The disciples of the Taishu temple felt a little bitter. Is the cultivator of Xianmen Tianzong going to refine Ding of Shenzhou? How can it be so easy? The hexagonal sword said in an old and weak voice. It's only affecting and changing the flow of spiritual qi in the Little Kelowna world. It's still a long way from communicating with the origin spirit of the creation artifact, and finally refining the artifact. Although that was what it said, the voice of the hexagonal sword became deeper, and it clearly sounded a little bitter. This was because it clearly knew that Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone still had a long way to go before he could refine Ding of Shenzhou. However, his actions in Ding of Shenzhou might bring about serious consequences. Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist were both outside, but Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone, the God of War clone, and Wang Lin's Great Devil clone were also outside. Before this, there had been no movements in the Little Kelowna world, which meant that the struggle between the two sides was mostly at a stalemate. The fact that the disciples of both sides were sent to White Cloud Mountain at the same time also reflected many problems. The situation in White Cloud Mountain would definitely affect the fight between the big shots of both sides outside Ding of Shenzhou. At this moment, outside of Little Kelowna world, Lin Feng's God of War clone placed one hand on Little Kelowna world, and pointed at the yin and yang life and death formation above with the other hand. The yin and yang life and death formation suddenly unfolded, while Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone loosened its claws and came before Shoichi Daishin. Shoichi Daishin frowned as he watched the purple qi in the Little Kelowna world gradually become more vigorous, while the white qi was gradually being suppressed. The balance between the two sides was initially at a stalemate, but now it began to lose its balance. Unfortunately, his Taishu temple was on the losing side. There's a problem inside the world. There's a change in White Cloud Mountain. Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist both understood what was going on. The collapse of a 1,000-mile dike was caused by an ant's nest. The gap between them grew larger and larger, until it became irrecoverable and unmanageable in the end. At this moment, the gap between the younger disciples caused the imbalance of the situation, affecting the outcome of the battle between Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and Kai Fengzhou. Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone entered White Cloud Mountain before Kai Fengzhou, and seized the opportunity to cooperate with Lin Feng outside. In the end, the struggle between Lin Feng and Shoichi Daishin lost its balance. The stalemate was broken, and Lin Feng also seized the opportunity to refine Ding of Shenzhou. Bit by bit, the chain reaction that was triggered was extremely huge. In the Little Kelowna world, from Kai Fengzhou to Chen Xingyu, Guo Chaoyang, and the others, everyone was still working hard. They knew how delicate the situation was. Although they were pessimistic, they still wanted to try to salvage the situation. Otherwise, the snowball of collapse would become bigger and bigger, and the final result would be reflected in the battle between the higher-ups of both sides. The pressure would fall on Shoichi Daishin and Xianlin Taoist. Outside the Little Kelowna world, Xianlin Taoist took a deep breath. Is it because junior brother Kai is no match for Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi? Or is there a change in other aspects? As he pondered, he did not slow down at all, and directly charged towards the Little Kelowna world. Wang Lin's Great Devil clone did not stand on ceremony either. He immediately went up to block Xianlin Taoist's path. Songtian Dao Jian did not follow Shi Tianhao into the Little Kelowna world. At this time, he also went up against Xianlin Taoist with Wang Lin. If it was only Wang Lin's Great Devil clone, Xianlin Taoist was confident that he could defeat it. However, with the addition of Songtian Dao Jian, the situation was completely different. This was a magic treasure that had reached the Mahayana grade in ancient times. It was powerful and sharp. Even Dao Master Xianlin couldn't ignore its existence. When Songtian Dao Jian and Wang Lin's Great Devil clone joined hands, Xianlin Taoist would not be able to defeat them. Even if he could, it would not be something that could be done in a short time. Shoichi Daishin pressed one hand against the Little Kelowna world, and the other hand lifted up. The Taishu temple appeared above his palm and collided with Lin Feng's Yin and Yang formation. In the Battle of West Hill City, the Taishu Sage Temple had once clashed directly with the Yin and Yang life and death formation. In the end, the Taishu Sage Temple had forcibly torn apart the light screen formed by the two extremities of the Yin and Yang life and death formation. At this moment, the two sides were fighting again. Under the collision, the Yin and Yang formation did not yield an inch and blocked the Taishu Temple. The huge temple, which seemed to be the resting place of all the giant gods, seemed to be able to contain the entire void of the star sea. Light flashed, and the gods and Buddhas chanted. However, it was blocked by the world of light formed by the Yin and Yang formation, and could not go any further. Wherever the light of the Taishu temple reached, it seemed to turn the universe and the starry sky into its own courtyard. However, the Yin and Yang formation forcibly drew a fence in the void, and divided the surrounding heaven and earth into two sides. It's different from the time in West Hill City, Lin Feng said lightly. Shoichi Daishin looked at the center of the Yin and Yang formation, and the indistinct 49 light spots. His eyes narrowed slightly, and then returned to normal. He said calmly, "It's indeed different." As he spoke, he pinched the palm that held up the Taishu temple, and pinched a Dharma formula. Suddenly, white clouds curled up, and golden light flashed. Between the white clouds and the golden light, there seemed to be countless figures chanting together. A celestial sound lingered, lingering, and like a fairyland, a world that made people yearn for it appeared on Shoichi Daishin's palm. The 9 heavens of Taishu technique, the 8 heavens of Taishu. Shen Tianmiao has the celestial realm. This Shen Tianmiao had the power of the celestial realm, and it was compatible with the Taishu temple. The shape of the Taishu temple suddenly changed, manifesting the celestial realm of the Taishu temple. Together with Shoichi Daishin's power, they pushed toward the Yin and Yang formation. Lin Feng's Yin and Yang formation had his 49 Yin and Yang dust as its core, and its power had increased to a new level. It could already fight against the creation magic treasure Taishu temple. However, the Taishu temple was operated by Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist together, and its power was also different when it was operated by Shoichi Daishin. Lin Feng's God of War doppelganger's expression did not change at all. While operating the Yin and Yang formation, he also worked on the little Kelowna world. His Brontosaurus doppelganger smiled. "It's all different now." After saying that, the huge white Brontosaurus's body shone with 4-colored lightning, and in its eyes all things of creation and the vicissitudes of life flashed. At this moment, its powerful and huge body was constantly changing between real and fake. One moment it was still a dragon body with majestic demonic power, and the next moment, it turned into a ball of light and shadow. It was like a Dharma body of the void that was cultivated after refining the spirit and returning to the void. In the next moment, the Yin and Yang formation wondrous realm covered Shoichi Daishin's body. Seeing this, Shoichi Daishin's pupils contracted slightly. His power was compatible with the Taishu temple, and he wanted to break the Yin and Yang formation wondrous realm. However, when Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger performed the technique, the God of War doppelganger also operated the Yin and Yang formation and swept over, engulfing the celestial realm of the Taishu temple. In an instant, the two sides fell into a stalemate again. However, because of the Yin and Yang formation wondrous realm, the connection between Shoichi Daishin and the little Kelowna world was cut off at this moment. The eyes of Lin Feng's God of War doppelganger flashed with purple light, and the little Kelowna world was quickly dyed purple. The white mist that had turned into a tree without roots was gradually defeated. Shoichi Daishin's calm eyes suddenly lit up with an unprecedented light. His gaze shifted between Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger and the God of War doppelganger, and his aura became extremely dangerous. Seeing this, Lin Feng smiled. "Why, Shoichi Daishin, are you trying to use the Dharma-ending calamity to force me to descend here?" Chapter 10:16. Lin Feng looked calm. "Do you need me to come here?" Shoichi Daishin didn't speak. He just looked at Lin Feng. For a moment, he really had the idea of using the Dharma-ending tribulation. A few experts in the initial tribulation stage might be able to compete with experts in the Dharma-ending realm in terms of divine sense and Dharma power, but once the opponent activated the Dharma-ending tribulation and hurt them, the result would be disastrous. For experts who hadn't completely passed the initial tribulation, enduring the Dharma-ending tribulation of an expert in the Dharma-ending realm was no different from starting a new tribulation on the spot. They would instantly fall into a period of severe weakness. They might not become lambs waiting to be slaughtered, but their strength would be greatly reduced. If there was a slight deviation, they might even directly die under the Dharma-ending tribulation. For practitioners who hadn't experienced the tribulation, facing experts in the Dharma-ending realm, if they couldn't properly resist and avoid the Dharma-ending tribulation, it would naturally be more dangerous, and they might even be killed instantly. As long as the experts in the Dharma-ending realm were willing to bear a Dharma-ending tribulation. However, although this method was straightforward, it had endless consequences. Most experts in the Dharma-ending realm would not use this method when their divine sense and Dharma power could subdue their opponents. After all, it was purely to hurt others. They also had to resist the Dharma-ending tribulation. If they were attacked by the Dharma-ending tribulation and hurt themselves, it would be easy for a third party to benefit from it. It was the worst strategy in a situation where there was no other way. Of course, if the situation was really necessary, Shoichi Daishin was decisive and would not have too many scruples. Lin Feng had always been sure of this. His Brontosaurus doppelganger could fight Shoichi Daishin in its original form. The yin and yang life and death formation could also wrestle with the Taishu Temple. In the case that they joined forces, he only needed to use the yin and yang restoration magical realm to block the connection between Shoichi Daishin and the Taishu Temple. After all, Shoichi Daishin and the Taishu Temple were two different individuals. They were not as close as the Dharma-ending realm and the unity of Demon Soul. However, if Shoichi Daishin were to activate the Dharma-ending catastrophe, the situation would be completely different. Whether it was the righteous Tao Venerate himself or the Taishu Sage Temple taking on the Dharma-ending cataclysm head-on, although they would be injured and their strength would decrease, they could still continue fighting. After the battle, they could focus all their strength and gradually recover from the damage caused by the degeneration cataclysm. It was completely acceptable for Shoichi Daishin to face the Dharma-ending catastrophe head-on. However, if Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone were to be struck by the Dharma-ending calamity, it was very likely that they would directly collapse and be annihilated. The Taishu Temple could help Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist withstand the tribulation, but the yin and yang life and death formation could not help Lin Feng. Shoichi Daishin stared at Lin Feng, watching the torrential purple qi sweeping and spreading in the little Kelowna world, and his brows furrowed tighter and tighter. For him, activating the Dharma-ending catastrophe was naturally a bad plan. The Taishu Temple did not have the Gate of the Sea of Stars, and it already lacked backup. If he was entangled by the degeneration calamity, the situation would be even more difficult to control. If activating the Dharma-ending catastrophe could work, Shoichi Daishin would still not hesitate. But now he had some doubts in his heart. After all, Lin Feng's mysterious heavenly escape technique was now well known in the world. It was unknown to Shoichi Daishin whether his two clones had mastered this technique or not. If the Brontosaurus clone and the God of War clone were also proficient in this technique, it would undoubtedly be meaningless for Shoichi Daishin to activate the Dharma-ending catastrophe, and it would only weaken his combat strength. Moreover, the most important point was that Lin Feng had a Gate of the Sea of Stars, and his real body could come over at any time. Shoichi Daishin did not know the reason why Lin Feng's real body did not enter the Sea of Stars, but he could guess that it was most likely because he was busy with other things, or was temporarily tied down by other things. Forcing Lin Feng's real body to come to the Sea of Stars at this time might delay the other things he was busy with, but for the people of the Taishu Temple, there was no benefit at all. It was purely harming others without benefiting themselves. Although it made people feel depressed just thinking about it, Shoichi Daishin was not a person who did not dare to face the truth. Before this, the ownership of Ding of Shenzhou was still in suspense, and the biggest reason was that Lin Feng's real body was not here. If Lin Feng's real body was really allowed to come to the Sea of Stars, And in a situation where the other big shots of the Taishu Temple could not come to support, there was no longer any suspense about the ownership of Ding of Shenzhou. Even if the power of the Haotian mirror was guided into the Sea of Stars, it would be blocked by the power of the boundaries, and its power would be greatly reduced, and it would also delay the recovery of the Haotian mirror. In the end, the best result that the Taishu Temple could fight for was to force Lin Feng to unseal the Sky Punishment Sword. And the hope was not great. In the end, it was still harming others without benefiting oneself. To be more precise, it was harming others and harming oneself. If Lin Feng's Sky Punishment Sword was really forced to unseal in advance, it would definitely not come back empty-handed. Now that the two sides were fighting for Ding of Shenzhou, it was still a treasure without an owner, and the fight over it depended on their own ability. Opportunities fell from the sky, and those who were capable could take it. However, if one went too far, the two sides would completely fall out, and there would be a fight to the death in the Sea of Stars. With Shoichi Dashin's style and character, he never resisted fighting with others, but he cared about the results of the fight. At this moment, the strength of the two sides in the Sea of Stars was completely disproportionate. As long as Lin Feng was willing, he could even move the entire Xianmen Tianzong from the Divine Land into the desolate ancient Sea of Stars. Shoichi Dashin's tightly knitted brows gradually relaxed, and the light in his eyes gradually subsided. Everything returned to normal, but his eyes became more serene. Sky Punishment Sword. Although his heart had already calmed down, this thought still came to Shoichi Dashin's mind at this time. 5 years ago in the vast Thousand Worlds, after escaping from the suppression of the spiritual sea, Shoichi Dashin had the intention to join forces with Lord Qingyi, Lord Xian, and the others to force Lord Tai to suppress and punish Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong. However, not only did Lin Feng's strength soar compared to the past, but he also achieved the Sky Punishment Sword because of the destruction of the celestial heaven in the Battle of Mount Shu. In the end, the matter could only be left unsettled. If Ding of Shenzhou also falls into the hands of Xianmen Tianzong, the situation will be even more urgent. As junior sister Qingyi said, the sooner the original plan is carried out, the better. Shoichi Dashin was silent. Thoughts flashed in his mind, and his hands did not slow down at all. However, he gave up the idea of using the Dharma-ending tribulation, and instead urged his supernatural powers and Dharma power. The power of Shen Tianmiao Fairyland continued to increase, and it constantly resonated with the Taishu Fairyland transformed by the Taishu Temple. This magic of his is more effective against the Dharma treasures of the human clan than against the demon clan. This magic is indeed worth paying attention to, not to mention the deep mysteries hidden in it. Just by using it in a fight, it actually faintly restrains the Taishu Temple, as if it wants to split the Taishu Temple again into the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum and the Void Yin-Yang Bell. Shoichi Dashin's face was expressionless. He continued to exert more force to stabilize the Taishu Temple, and at the same time, a mysterious and powerful force broke Lin Feng's Yin and Yang restoration magical realm. He held the Taishu Temple in his hand and stepped out, shaking off the brilliance of the Yin and Yang formation with a loud bang. I have to finish this quickly. With a slight change of thought, Shoichi Dashin's body began to emit a layer of hazy brilliance. It seemed to be there and not there, mysterious and mysterious. This brilliance was not bright, dazzling, grand, or shocking, but it was mysterious and unfathomable. It was indescribable, and seemed omnipotent. At this moment in the little Kelowna world, from the outside, the purple chi had overwhelmed the white chi. Shoichi Dashin's face was expressionless. He pressed his other hand on the little Kelowna world, but the inside of the little Kelowna world suddenly shook. The space of the world kept folding and shrinking, and finally returned to the original appearance of Ding of Shenzhou. Clang! A loud sound suddenly spread out from the body of the cauldron, and ripples that were clearly visible to the naked eye kept spreading to the surrounding void. Xianlin Taoist, Songtian Daojian, and Wang Lin's great devil doppelganger were at the periphery. Facing the ripples, their expressions turned solemn, and they dealt with it cautiously. Lin Feng and Shoichi Dashin stared intently at Ding of Shenzhou. They could clearly feel that there was a majestic will coming from Ding of Shenzhou at this moment. It was not specific words, nor was it a clear will. It was just that one could feel its existence. At the same time, this existence was extremely powerful, and it was hard to ignore. However, at this moment, Shoichi Dashin felt his palm, which was placed on Ding of Shenzhou, suddenly tremble. Ding of Shenzhou was targeting him, and it was clear that it was resisting him. This resistance was not strong, but it was clear, and no one would ever misunderstand it. The next moment, an image appeared in the minds of Lin Feng and Shoichi Dashin. A person dressed in a black dragon robe stood in the void. He wore a flat crown on his head, and his facial features could not be seen clearly. This was not the primordial spirit of Ding of Shenzhou, but the expert who refined it in the past, Xia Huang. At this moment, Xia Huang was looking into the distance. In the distance, waves were undulating, and there was a huge battle going on. A few Yuanying human race cultivators surrounded and killed a demon king, but they were soon killed by a great demon king with an indestructible demon soul. In the blink of an eye, this great demon king with an indestructible demon soul was blocked by a human race expert in the primordial soul realm, and the two sides began a bloody battle. In the end, the human race expert was more skilled. Although he was also seriously injured, he still killed his opponent. However, before he could enjoy the joy of victory, before he could escape from the battlefield to heal his injuries, a roaring and galloping Feng Yi, whose body was burning with blue-purple demonic flames, rushed up from behind and directly smashed his primordial soul. Almost at the same time, a human race Dao integration realm expert descended from the sky and kicked the fire pig. Its huge body kept rolling between heaven and earth, turning the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers into a sea of fire. When Lin Feng and Shoichi Dashin saw this human race expert, their eyes narrowed slightly. This was the martial arts expert from the ancient giant spirit sect that they had seen in the light and shadow that appeared in Ding of Shenzhou. This person strode toward Feng Yi, but soon, a heavenly demonic ape pounced toward him. When Lin Feng saw this scene, he understood. This happened earlier than what we saw in the light and shadow. He looked at Xia Huang and saw that Xia Huang was also watching the battlefield in the distance. Next, it should be the heavenly demonic ape fighting with the expert from the ancient giant spirit sect, the refining armor black dragon fighting with a Buddhist mighty figure, and finally, Xia Huang arriving and cooking the great demon king. However, perhaps because he did not deliberately suppress or hide his injuries, Lin Feng could clearly feel the weakness in Xia Huang, who had not appeared in front of others. Although his aura was stable and did not reveal any flaws, Lin Feng and Shoichi Dashin could clearly feel that Xia Huang had been injured at this moment. Xia Huang stood silently in the void. After a long time, a faint sigh sounded between heaven and earth. Except for Xia Huang himself and Ding of Shenzhou, no one knew. However, Lin Feng and Shoichi Dashin could tell what Xia Huang was sighing about through the light and shadow left by Ding of Shenzhou. Revenge breeds revenge, and it is hard to say what is good and bad. After all, I have something that I cannot give up, so I cannot escape this cycle. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.